Good evening and welcome to Say Brother. In October, the Boston Globe sponsored a book festival. One of the celebrated guests were the celebrated Maya Angelou, author of works like Just Give Me a Cool Drink of Water Before I Die and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and is currently now touring with her new collection of poetry, And Still I Rise. Let me introduce a living legend in her own time, Ms. Maya Angelou.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
Welcome.
Thank you for you. Thank you for you.
I want you to tell me something about your mother. I know your mother has influenced you a great deal. I want you to tell us about your mother.
Well, I believe that people live in direct relation to the heroes and sheroes they have.
All right.
And my mother is my great shero.
All right.
She's just retired 4 months ago from the Merchant Marine. 20 years ago, she decided she was going to sea. And I asked her, what was she going to see? And she said she was going to become a seaman. And I asked her why, and she said, because they told me they wouldn't let women in their union. She said, you know what I told them, honey? I told them, you want to bet? She said, I put my foot in that door up to my hip until women of every color would walk over my foot, get in that union, get aboard a ship, and go to sea. And now out of San Francisco, there are black women, Asian women, Chicano women, and white women who ship out of San Francisco for the Pacific Far East Line. San Francisco, Honolulu, Fiji, Tahiti, Bora Bora, New Zealand, Australia.
Oh, that is fantastic.
She's outrageous.
All right, that is fantastic.
She's outrageous. And she's about as big as a minute.
All right.
You know?
Which has nothing to do with
exactly
right?
not.
All right. May we have a second question? Verdia? Go ahead.
My name is Verdia Brown. I'm the librarian at the African American Institute at Northeastern University. My question is, first a little statement and then a question. During the late 60s, early 60s, the doors opened for many promising black writers. The publishing houses opened them up and we were very popular at that time. I would like to know from you, what do you think the trend is now for promising young authors? Do you in fact think that the doors are still opening wide or wider, or whether or not it's beginning to reverse?
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Brown. I think that we are seeing a backlash in publishing and in the reception of black American writing, not only from white Americans, but black Americans are not reading as much as we should to understand where we are. Publishers are not publishing with the kind of generosity or abandon that the 60s issued in. The 60s issued in that kind of generosity because of the force of the revolution of that time. And now, as the people sit down, so do the publishers, you see. I think it is important to remember what Frederick Douglass said, which is power has never been known to give up anything on the simple request of it. You can't say, I would like more books, please. I want my freedom, if you please. You can't do that. You must push for it. You must work for it. You must be ready to sacrifice something for it. There are many young black writers, young Asian writers, Chicano, Spanish-speaking writers, Native American writers, white writers who will never be heard, who will become eccentrics in the next 20 years because nobody cared enough. They'll be wearing paper hats on their heads and going barefoot and they will become bag women and bag men and junkies because the people for whom they will write don't care enough to encourage them to write. All right?
All right. And one more question, please.
My name is Charlize Lyles, and I'm from Boston University School of Theater Arts. Most of the discussion today is focused on your career as a writer, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your career as an actress and your new film, Sisters.
You're jumping to my question.
Okay. Well, as an actor, I act off sometimes because of the pressures on me to act. In Roots, I did a scene, a cameo part in Roots, because Alex Haley and the two producers begged me to do it. I did it because I wanted to direct 2 of those segments. They wanted me because of my name. I agreed. I worked very hard for this name. And if you can't be used, you're useless. So I said, very good. On the other hand, consider me seriously, because I'm the first black female director in Hollywood, and I needed that credit. I believe they considered me seriously. They got to a place where they were pushed for time and money and had to get someone with more expertise. I believe that. I don't hold a grudge. The few things I do, the Richard Pryor show, I wrote that segment on the Richard Pryor special, and then Richard asked if I would do it. I sing for a living. I have sung for a living. But I could never be a great singer, nor can I be a great actress. I can be adequate and sometimes a little better than adequate, but never great, because I don't love it. I love writing. I love it. I will surrender everything to writing. I will not do that for the theater, for performing in it, nor will I do it for singing, you see. And for the actor, male or female actor, I'm beginning to loathe those suffixes. You know, I hate actress, poetess, sculptress, Jewess, negress. No. It's too tiresome. I mean, first off, you've got too much to think about to continue to put those tail ends on words. So, for the female actor or male actor, I suggest that when he or she is ready to sacrifice everything to learn that craft, to learn it, make it automatic, then he or she has a chance to be great. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question from one of our viewers. What are some of the most important things we need to do to help ourselves as black people?
Well, I think read. It sounds like this might be a contradiction of interest, or just the opposite maybe. But you see, no person can tell where he or she is going unless the person knows where he or she has been.
Okay.
You see? You can't begin to plan your future unless you know where you've been. You cannot. I mean, right now, here in this studio, if you didn't remember where you came from to arrive here at this studio, remembered where you parked your car, just the most practical, what would you do? You'd go outside and stand around and wonder. Wonder. That is true historically. So the most we can do is look at the documents. The documents are there. Read. Encourage our children to read, because the television will show the graphics that that machine can show. And only that. It cannot do the prose of setting up the circumstance. It can't make you smell how sweet potato pie smells in the South when you're hungry, just at the turn of the century. It can't. But a book, well written, can do it.
Can do it well. Another question from one of our viewers. How do you perceive the climate in this country as far as third world people are concerned?
Well, I think that we are in a position, all of us, are in a wonderful position where we have a chance to come together. I think that that because of the movement of the 50s, which mustn't be left out of consideration, the 50s and the 60s, women's movements were stimulated to start. Young people, students' movements were inspired to begin. Asian movements, Spanish-speaking people's movements, Native American movements got their inspiration from the Black American movement of the 50s and the 60s. So I think that we're in a position now where we really can make some alliances instead of being victims to Machiavelli's suggestion in 1492, which has become the background for all colonialism, for foreign and internal policy, which is separate and rule, divide and conquer. If we can get over that hurdle, so that these various groups can come together and share thoughts and dreams and failures and aspirations, we might change, we might make a difference. But as long as we accept human-made differences between human beings, we'll always be victims, isolated victims, to be knocked off, one by one.
Okay. You played the grandmother in Roots, as the sister brought out.
Yes.
Grandmother to Kunta Kinte.
Yes.
What really was your complete experience with that? What did you feel about that whole environment?
It was incredible to go to Savannah, Georgia, to the set. I lived for a number of years in Egypt and 4.5 years in Ghana. And I couldn't believe going into Savannah, Georgia on the outskirts. I was in West Africa. It looked like it.
It did.
It really looked like it. I don't mean just the sets, but there were the birds, which they are native also to Georgia. And the swamp, the savannah was very much like West Africa. So that gave me once a sense of déjà vu. I have seen this before. And dealing with that story was my story, as it is your story, and many of your viewers' story, most of the audience's story, directly. My great-great-great-great-grandfather could have been a cousin to Kunta Kinte.
Yes.
So that's true for all of us.
Yes.
So it's so personal that everyone I know who worked on it did their best, did more than their best, outstretched themselves. Okay?
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships rolling in, then I'll watch them roll away again. I'm just sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. I left my home in Georgia and I headed for the Frisco Bay, 'cause I've got nothing to live for. Look like nothing's gonna come my way, so I'm just gonna sit on the dock of the bay.
Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy. Last book selection of the 2024 calendar year. It is Boxing Day. Today's date, Thursday, December 26, 2024. So I have been told. This is our debut study session. Back-to-back memoirs, Gus T in his happy place. You know I love the biographies, back-to-back autobiographies, and again we are double dipping, which we rarely do. Katherine Massey Book Club, we have read the late great grandsister Dr. Maya Angelou before. We read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and I will again remind, while I was in San Francisco, the San Francisco Public Library, they had their Book of the City. They have, I guess, a citywide book club where people get together at the San Francisco public libraries. They have like 20 branches throughout the city, much like Seattle. And so I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was the book they were reading last month. And I was like, oh man, I was going to go to one of the sessions because we read that book way back in 2014 after Dr. Angelou passed away. However, once I went down to LA and saw Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat for the third time, I was able to accurately write down that, oh yes, the book that is quoted in that film from Dr. Maya Angelou is The Heart of a Woman. I had to see the film 3 times to write that title down. In the dark. So, but after that, I got it and I was able to get said autobiography while I was in Los Angeles. By the time I got to San Francisco, I already had this book. And so they had lots of displays. They have a huge statue of Dr. Angelou out front of the main downtown San Francisco library branch that is immaculate. And they had lots of displays and her work, and it seemed like they had, just a big exhibit to Dr. Angelou at the main library. Excellent, fabulous, she earned it. I looked, and they had an exhibit that listed a number of her books. This book was not listed. That right there confirmed for me that, and then when I got this book and I looked, Patrice Lumumba's name is all over this book. That confirmed, like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to read this book next. Even kind of felt like, ooh, that is showing off a little bit to pick 2 books from Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, 2 autobiographies from noted black females from really the same time period, and they're kind of talking about the same event. In my happy spot. The audio that we heard at the beginning, that is from the 1978 interview on the program Say Brother. The black female doing the interview, the lovely Barbara Barrow Murray. You heard her, and even some of the audience members being able to get some questions in. I was stunned by a number of her responses. One, when she talked about how if we don't support writers, they were talking about the so-called backlash in the publishing industry, which, hey, now we're about book banning and all the rest of it. But she was saying that the publishing industry, now they're not as reckless or as generous with their publishing, and so you might have writers, white writers and black writers and all the rest who are not supported and are homeless and all that. Man, Neely Fuller Jr. has told us for years, you do have some white sacrifice, but white people got a safety net. Now, granted, Dr. Angelou, if she's living in the San Francisco area, hey, yes, they do have some white drugged out people, but even those white people got a better safety net, better conditions. You do have white sacrifice than the non-white drugged out people in San Francisco. And Carl Walker talked about that in her exhibit while I was in the 415. The next component, the alliance, I guess, BGQ, we just work to do the best that we can as non-white people, victims of racism. But I've seen no evidence of any sort of substantial, sustained alliance between individuals who are classified as non-white. I don't even see no sort of alliance between the people that are classified as black, who all have 8 great-grandparents born in Mississippi, much less all the rest of the colors. I was equally staggered, maybe even more so, when she said, audience member asked, what are some of the things that we can do to improve the status of third world people? I kind of cringed when I heard that, like, ew, what? Do you mean victims of white supremacy? Like, third world? Like, what? Well, I know we're not on the same planet as white people, but what? Metaphor? What? Just, who are you talking about? Non-white people, victims of racism? Got it. What can we do to improve? She didn't say get a gun. She didn't say go out and shoot whitey. She didn't say form an organization. She didn't say learn Swahili. She didn't say go back to the homeland. She said read. And it almost sounded like a full stop. What should we do? Read. Even put that with what Dr. Welsing said from the archives when I played yesterday, State of the Race Conference, which was also in California, courtesy of San Francisco, in 1977. The interview that we heard was 1978. If I can sequence that up correctly. So we heard Dr. Welsing talking at the end of October 1977, and then that was Dr. Maya Angelou talking in January of 1978. All of this is circling towards Jonestown. See, 78 November. Anyway, but she said read. Dr. Welsing Yesterday at the State of the Race Conference, we heard the archive. She said, stop name calling. Stop gossiping. Simple things. How you could even put that together. I'm going to stop gossiping and name calling black people and read a book. Almost like they saying that might do a lot to help us end white supremacy racism. Staggering. We're doing our part. Got a book club. Any hoodles. And just a reminder, the publishers who would be, I guess now we're not going to be as generous, white women. Any hoodles. We will hear lots about her mom and, yeah, lots more. I cannot wait. So excited. We'll hear lots about her mom and the great Patrice Lumumba. So excited. Context of white supremacy. That is Otis Redding in the background. Also talking about San Francisco Bay and the racism sitting out on the dock of the bay because I can't get a job, like they didn't want to hire her black mom either. Katherine Massey Book Club, the Autobiography Kings, Dr. Maya Angelou, The Heart of a Woman, audio segment 1.
I can't do what 10 people tell me to do, so I guess I'll remain the same, sitting here resting my bones.
The Heart of a Woman by Dr. Maya Angelou. I dedicate this book to my grandson, Colin Ashanti Murphy Johnson. Acknowledgements. Special thanks to a few of the many sister or friends whose love encourages me to spell my name, woman. Doris Bullard, Rosa Guy, M.J. Hewitt, Ruth Love, Paul Marshall, Louise Meriwether, Dolly McPherson, Emmeline Rogers, Efua Sutherland, Decca Truhaft, Francis Williams, A.B. Williamson. The old ark's a moverin', the old ark's a moverin' along. That ancient spiritual could have been the theme song of the United States in 1957. We were a moverin' to fro, up, down, and often in concentric circles. We created a maze of contradictions. Black and white Americans dance a fancy and often dangerous decee-do. In our steps forward, abrupt turns, sharp spins, and reverses, we became our own befuddlement. The country hailed Althea Gibson, the rangy tennis player who was the first black female to win the U.S. women's singles. President Dwight Eisenhower sent U.S. paratroopers to protect black school children in Little Rock, Arkansas, and South Carolina's Senator Strom Thurmond harangued for 24 hours and 18 minutes to prevent the passage in Congress of the Civil Rights Commission's Voting Rights Bill. Sugar Ray Robinson, everybody's dandy, lost his middleweight title, won it back, then lost it again, all in a matter of months. The year's popular book was Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and its title was an apt description of our national psyche. We were indeed traveling, but no one knew our destination nor our arrival date. I had returned to California from a year-long European tour as premier dancer with Porgy and Bess. I worked months singing in West Coast and Hawaiian nightclubs and saved my money. I took my young son, Guy, and joined the Beatnik Brigade. To my mother's dismay and Guy's great pleasure, we moved across the Golden Gate Bridge and into a houseboat commune in Sausalito where I went barefoot, wore jeans, and both of us were rough, dry clothes. Although I took Guy to a San Francisco barber, I allowed my own hair to grow into a wide, unstraightened hedge, which made me look at a distance like a tall brown tree whose branches had been clipped. My commune mates, an ichthyologist, a musician, a wife, and an inventor, were white, and had they been political, which they were not, would have occupied a place between the far left and revolution. Strangely, the houseboat offered me respite from racial tensions and gave my son an opportunity to be around whites who did not think of him as too exotic to need correction, nor so common as to be ignored. During our stay in Sausalito, my mother struggled with her maternal instincts. On her monthly visits, dressed in stone marten furs, diamonds, and spike heels, which constantly caught between loose floorboards, she forced smiles and held her tongue. Her eyes, however, were frightened for her baby and her baby's baby. She left wads of money under my pillow or gave me checks as she kissed me goodbye. She could have relaxed as she remembered the biblical assurance. Fruit does not fall far from the tree. In less than a year, I began to yearn for privacy, wall-to-wall carpets, and manicures. Guy was becoming rambunctious and young animal wild. He was taking fewer baths than I thought healthy, and because my friends treated him like a young adult, he was forgetting his place in the scheme of our mother-son relationship. I had to move on. I could go back to singing and make enough money to support myself and my son. I had to trust life since I was young enough to believe that life loved the person who dared to live it. I packed our bags, said goodbye, and got on the road. Laurel Canyon was the official residential area of Hollywood, just 10 minutes from Schwab's drugstore and 15 minutes from the Sunset Strip. Its most notable feature was its sensuality. Red-roofed, Moorish-style houses nestled seductively among madrone trees. The odor of eucalyptus was layered in the moist air. Flowers bloomed in a riot of crimsons, carnelian, pinks, fuchsia, and sunburst gold. Jays and whippoorwills, swallows and bluebirds squeaked, whistled, and sang on branches which faded from ominous dark green to a brackish yellow. Movie stars, movie starlets, producers, and directors who lived in the neighborhood were as voluptuous as their natural and unnatural environment. The few black people who lived in Laurel Canyon, including Billy Eckstein, Billy Daniels, and Herb Jeffries, were rich, famous, and light-skinned enough to pass, at least for Portuguese. I, on the other hand, was a little-known nightclub singer who was said to have more determination than talent. I wanted desperately to live in the glamorous surroundings. I accepted as fictitious the tales of amateurs being discovered at lunch counters, yet I did believe it was important to be in the right place at the right time, and no place seemed so right to me in 1958 as Laurel Canyon. When I answered a for rent ad, the landlord told me the house had been taken that very morning. I asked Gatara and Joe Morheim, a sympathetic white couple, to try to rent the house for me. They succeeded in doing so. On moving day, the Morheims, Frederick Wilkie Wilkerson, my friend and voice coach, Guy, and I appeared on the steps of a modest, overpriced two-bedroom bungalow. The landlord shook hands with Joe, welcomed him, then looked over Joe's shoulder and recognized me. Shock and revulsion made him recoil. He snatched his hand away from Joe. "You bastard! I know what you're doing. I ought to sue you." Joe, who always seemed casual to the point of being totally disinterested, surprised me with his emotional response. "You fascist, you better not mention suing anybody. This lady here should sue you. If she wants to, I'll testify in court for her. Now, get the hell out of the way so we can move in." The landlord brushed past us, throwing his anger into the perfumed air. "I should have known. You dirty Jew. You bastard, you." We laughed nervously and carried my furniture into the house. Weeks later, I had painted the small house a sparkling white, enrolled Guy into the local school, received only a few threatening telephone calls, and bought myself a handsome dated automobile. The car, a sea green 10-year-old Chrysler, had a parquet dashboard and splintery wooden doors. It could not compete with the new chrome of my neighbors' Cadillacs and Buicks, but it had an elderly elegance, and driving in it with the top down, I felt more like an eccentric artist than a poor black woman who was living above her means, out of her element, and removed from her people. One June morning, Wilkie walked into my house and asked, "Do you want to meet Billie Holiday?" Of course. Who wouldn't? Is she working in town? No, just passing through from Honolulu. I'm going down to her hotel. I'll bring her back here if you think you can handle it. What's to handle? She's a woman. I'm a woman. Wilkie laughed, the chuckle rolling inside his chest and out of his mouth in billows of sound. "Pooh, you're sassy. Billie may like you. In that case, it'll be all right. She might not, and then that's your ass. That could work the other way around. I might not like her either. Wilkie laughed again. I said you're sassy. Have you got some gin? There was one bottle which had been gathering dust for months. Wilkie stood. Give me the keys. She'll like riding in a convertible. I didn't become nervous until he left. Then the reality of Lady Day coming to my house slammed into me and started my body to quaking. It was pretty well known that she used heavy drugs, and I hardly smoked grass anymore. How could I tell her she couldn't shoot up or sniff up in my house? It was also rumored that she had lesbian affairs. If she propositioned me, how could I reject her without making her think I was rejecting her? Her temper was legendary in show business, and I didn't want to arouse it. I vacuumed, emptied ashtrays, and dusted, knowing that a clean house would in no way influence Billie Holiday. I saw her through the screen door, and my nervousness turned quickly to shock. The bloated face held only a shadow of its familiar prettiness. When she walked into the house, her eyes were a flat black, and when Wilkie introduced us, her hand lay in mine like a child's rubber toy. How you do, Maya? You got a nice house. She hadn't even looked around. It was the same slow, lean, whining voice which had frequently been my sole companion on lonely nights. I brought gin and sat listening as Wilkie and Billie talked about the old days, the old friends in Washington, D.C. The names they mentioned and the escapades over which they gloated meant nothing to me, but I was caught into the net of their conversation by the complexity of Billie's language. Experience with street people, hustlers, gamblers, and petty criminals had exposed me to cursing. Years in nightclub dressing rooms, in cabarets and juke joints had taught me every combination of profanity, or so I thought. Billie Holiday's language was a mixture of mockery and vulgarity that caught me without warning. Although she used the old common words, they were in new arrangements and spoken in that casual tone which seemed to drag itself, rasping, across the ears. When she finally turned to include me in her conversation, I knew that nothing I could think of would hold her attention. Wilkie tells me you're a singer. You a jazz singer, too? You any good? No, not really. I don't have good pitch. Do you want to be a great singer? You want to compete with me? No, I don't want to compete with anybody. I'm an entertainer making a living. As an entertainer? You mean showing some titty and shaking your booty? I don't have to do all that. I wouldn't do that to keep a job. No matter what. You better say Joe, 'cause you sure don't know. Wilkie came to my defense just as I was wondering how to get the woman and her hostility out of my house. Billie, you ought to see her before you talk. She sings folk songs, calypso, and blues. Now, you know me. If I say she's good, I mean it. She's good, and she's nice enough to invite us to lunch, so get up off her. Or you can walk your ass right down this hill. And you know I'm not playing about that shit. She started laughing. Wilkie, you haven't changed a damn thing but last year's drawers. I knew you'd put my ass out on the street sooner or later. She turned to me and gave me a fragile smile. What we going to eat, baby? I hadn't thought about food, but I had a raw chicken in the refrigerator. I'm going to fry a chicken. Fried chicken, rice, and an Arkansas gravy. Chicken and rice is always good. But fry that sucker. Fry him till he's ready. I can't stand no goddamn rare chicken. Billie, I don't claim to be a great singer, but I know how to mix groceries. I have never served raw chicken. I had to defend myself even if it meant she was going to curse me out. Oak. Baby. Oak. Just telling you, I can't stand to see blood on the bone of a chicken. I take your word you know what you're doing. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I retreated to the kitchen. Wilkie's and Billie's laughter floated over the clangs of pots and the sputtering oil. I couldn't imagine how the afternoon was going to end. Maybe I'd be lucky. They would drink all the gin and Wilkie would take her to a bar on Sunset. She sat at the table gingerly. Each move of her body seemed to be considered before she attempted execution. You set a pretty table and you ain't got a husband? I told her I lived alone with my son. She turned with the first sharp action I had seen since she came into my house. I can't stand children. The little crumb crushers eat you out of house and home and never say, "Dog, kiss my foot." My son is not like that. He's intelligent and polite. Yeah. Well, I can't stand to be around any of the little bastards. This is good chicken. I looked at Wilkie, who nodded to me. Wilkie said, "Billy, I'm going to take you to a joint on Western where you can get anything you want." She didn't allow the full mouth of chicken to prevent her from speaking. Hell, nigger, if I wanted to go to a joint, don't you think I could have found one without you? I know every place in every town in this country that sells anything that crosses your mind. I wanted to come to a nice lady's house. She's a good cook, too. So I'm happy as a sissy in a CCC camp. Let me have that drumstick. While I put away the remaining chicken, she talked about Hawaii. People love the islands, the islands. Hell, all that shit is a bunch of water and a bunch of sand. So the sun shines all the time. What the hell else is the sun supposed to do? But didn't you find it beautiful? The soft air, the flowers, the palm trees, and the people? The Hawaiians are so pretty. They just a bunch of niggers. Niggers running around with no clothes on. And that music shit they play. She imitated the sound of a ukulele. No, I'd rather be in New York. Everybody in New York City is a son of a bitch, but at least they don't pretend they're something else. Back in the living room, Wilkie looked at me, then at his watch. "I have a student coming in a half hour. Come on, Billy, I'll take you back to your hotel." "Thanks, Maya. We have to go." Billy looked up from her drink and said, "Speak for yourself. All I got to do is stay black and die. Well, I brought you here, so I'll take you back. Anyway, Maya's probably got something to do." They both stared at me. I thought for a moment and decided not to lie. "No, I'm free. I'll take her back to the hotel when she wants to go." Wilkie shook his head. "Oak. Pooh." His face was saying, "I hope you know what you're doing." Of course I didn't, but I was more curious than afraid. Billy tossed her head. "So I'll see you when I see you, Wilkie. Hope it won't be another 20 years. Wilkie bent and kissed her, gave me a very strange look, and walked down to his car. We spent the first few moments in silence. Billy was examining me, and I was wondering what subject I could introduce that would interest her. Finally, she asked, "You a square, ain't you?" I knew what she meant. "Yes. Then how come you invited me to your house?" Wilkie really invited her, but I had welcomed his invitation. "Because you are a great artist and I respect you." Bullshit. You just wanted to see what I look like up close. She interrupted my denial. "That's all right. That don't hurt my feelings. You see me now, though you ain't seeing nothing. I used to be a bitch on wheels. Lots of folks thought I was pretty. Anyway, that's what they said. Course, you know how folks talk. They'll tell you anything to get what they want. Course, there are them that'll just strong-arm you and take it. I know a lot of them, too." Suddenly, she withdrew into her thoughts, and I sat quiet, not wanting to break into her reverie. She raised her head and turned half away from me, toward the window. When she spoke, it was in a conspiratorial whisper. Men can really do it to you. Women would too, if they had the nerve. They are just as greedy. They're just scared to let on. I had heard stories of Billy being beaten by men, cheated by drug pushers, and hounded by narcotics agents. Still, I thought she was the most paranoid person I had ever met. "Don't you have any friends? People you can trust?" She jerked her body toward me. "Of course I have friends. Good friends. A person who don't have friends might as well be dead." She had relaxed, but my question put her abruptly on the defense again. I was wondering how to put her at ease. I heard Guy's footsteps on the stairs. My son is coming home. Oh, shit. How old you say he is? He's 12 and a very nice person. Guy bounded into the room, radiating energy. Hey, Mamho Araya, what were you doing? What's for dinner? Canaguverdo Tony's Canagoverdinatossi. Guy, I have a guest. This is Miss Billie Holiday. He turned and saw Billie, but was accelerating too fast to read the distaste on her face. Billie Holiday? Oh, yes, I know about you. Good afternoon, Miss Holiday. He walked over and stuck out his hand. I'm happy to know you. I read about you in a magazine. They said the police have been giving you a hard time, and that you've had a very hard life. Is that true? What did they do to you? Is there anything you can do back? I mean, sue them or anything? Billie was too stunned at the barrage of words to speak. Guy reached down and took her hand and shook it. The words never stopped tumbling out of his mouth. Maybe they expect too much from you. I know something about that. When I come from school, the first thing I have to do after I change school clothes, of course, is go out and water the lawn. Have you not noticed we live on the side of a mountain, and when I water, if there is any wind, the water gets blown back in your face? But if I come in wet, my mother thinks I was playing with the hose. I can't control the wind, you know. Will you come out and talk to me when I've changed? I'd really like to know everything about you. He dropped her hand and ran out of the room, shouting, I'll be back in a minute. Billie's face was a map of astonishment. After a moment, she looked at me. Damn, he's something, ain't he? Smart. What's he want to be? Sometimes a doctor and sometimes a fireman. It depends on the day you ask him. Good. Don't let him go into show business. Black men in show business is bad news. When they can't get as far as they deserve, they start taking it out on their women. What'd you say his name is? Guy Johnson. Your name is Angelou. His name is Johnson? You don't look old enough to have married twice. Guy was born to me when I was an unmarried teenager, so I had given him my father's name. I didn't want Billie to know that much about our history. I said, well, that's life, isn't it? She nodded and mumbled. Yeah, life's a bitch on wheels. Guy burst into the room again, wearing old jeans and a torn t-shirt. Ready, Miss Holiday? You want to do anything? Come on. I won't let you get wet. Billie rose slowly with obvious effort. I decided it was time for me to step in. Guy, Miss Holiday is here to talk to me. Go out and do your chores and later you can talk to her. Billie was erect. No, I'm going out with him. But how the hell can you let him wear raggedy clothes like that? You living in a white district. Everybody be having their eyes on him. Guy, tomorrow, if you mama will take me, I'm going to the store and buy you some nice things. You don't have to look like you going to pick cotton just cause you doing a little work. Come on, let's go. Guy held the door for her as she picked her way across the room into the steps. A minute later, I watched from the window as my son directed the hose toward the rose garden and Billie maintained her balance, although the heels of her baby doll pumps were sinking into the soft earth. She stayed for dinner, saying that I could drop her off on my way to work. She talked to Guy while I cooked. Surprisingly, he sat quiet, listening as she spoke of southern towns, police, agents, good musicians, and mean men she had known. She carefully avoided profanity, and each time she slipped, she'd excuse herself to Guy, saying, "It's just another bad habit I got." After dinner, when the babysitter arrived, Billie told Guy that she was going to sing him a good night song. They went to his room, and I followed. Guy sat on the side of his bed, and Billie began, a cappella. "You're my thrill." An old song heavy with sensuous meaning. She sang as if she was starved for sex, and only the boy, looking at her out of bored young eyes, could give her satisfaction. I watched and listened from the door, recording every sound, really setting in my mind the rusty voice, the angle of her body, and Guy's look of tolerance. He'd rather be reading or playing a word game. When I dropped her at the Sunset Colonial Hotel, she told me to pick her up the next morning early. I was amazed to hear her say that she was having trouble sleeping, so she might as well bring her chihuahua along and spend the time with me. For the next 4 days, Billy came to my house in the early mornings, talked all day long, and sang a bedtime song to Guy, and stayed until I went to work. She said I was restful to be around because I was so goddamn square. Although she continued to curse in Guy's absence, when he walked into the house, her language not only changed, she made considerable effort to form her words with distinction. On the night before she was leaving for New York, she told Guy she was going to sing Strange Fruit as her last song. We sat at the dining room table while Guy stood in the doorway. Billy talked and sang in a hoarse, dry tone the well-known protest song. Her rasping voice and phrasing literally enchanted me. I saw the black bodies hanging from southern trees. I saw the lynch victim's blood glide from the leaves down the trunks and onto the roots. Guy interrupted. How can there be blood at the root? I made a hard face and warned him. Shut up, Guy, just listen. Billy had continued under the interruption, her voice vibrating over harsh edges. She painted a picture of a lovely land, pastoral and bucolic, then added eyes bulged and mouths twisted onto the southern landscape. Guy broke into her song. What's a pastoral scene, Miss Holiday? Billy looked up slowly and studied Guy for a second. Her face became cruel, and when she spoke, her voice was scornful. It means when the crackers are killing the niggers. It means when they take a little nigger like you and snatch off his nuts and shove them down his goddamn throat. That's what it means. The thrust of rage repelled Guy and stunned me. Billy continued. That's what they do. That's a goddamn pastoral scene. Guy gave us both a frozen look and said, Excuse me, I'm going to bed. He turned and walked away. I lied and said it was time for me to go to work. Billy didn't hear either statement. I went to Guy's room and apologized to him for Billy's behavior. He smiled sarcastically as if I had been the one who had shouted at him, and he offered a cool cheek for my goodnight kiss. In the car, I tried to explain to Billy why she had been wrong, but she refused to understand. She said, I didn't lie, did I? Did I lie on the crackers? What's wrong with telling the truth? She decided that she didn't want to be taken to the hotel. She wanted to accompany me to the nightclub and catch my act. Efforts to dissuade her were unsuccessful. I took her into the club and found her a front row seat and went to my dressing room. Jimmy Trout of the Lester Horton dance troupe was in costume for their first number. Hey! Jimmy was grinning like a child. Billie Holiday is out front, and you can't believe what's happening. The other dancers gathered around. The great Billie Holiday is sitting in the front row, and a little dog is drinking out of her glass. I had gotten so used to Peppy, I had forgotten that Billy hardly made a move without him. The dancers took over the stage, sliding, burning brightly in a Latin routine. When they finished, I was introduced. After my first song, I spoke directly to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, it is against the policy of the club to mention any celebrity who might be in the audience for fear that an unseen person might be missed. But tonight I am violating that custom. I think everyone will be excited to know that Miss Billie Holiday is present. The crowd responded to my announcement with an approving roar. People stood cheering, looking around the room for Billie. She looked straight at me then, picking up Peppy, stood up, turned to the audience, and bowed her head 2 or 3 times as if she was agreeing with them. She sat down without smiling. My next song was an old blues, which I began singing with only a bass accompaniment. The music was a dirge and the lyrics tragic. I had my eyes closed when suddenly, like a large glass shattering, Billie's voice penetrated the song. Stop that bitch. Stop her, goddamn it. Stop that bitch. She sounds just like my goddamn mama. I stopped and opened my eyes and saw Billy pick up Peppy and head through the crowd toward the women's toilet. I thanked the audience, asked the orchestra leader to continue playing, and headed for the women's lavatory. Twice in one night the woman had upset me. Well, she wasn't going to get away with it. She was going to learn that a goddamn square could defend herself. I had my hand on the knob when the door burst open and a very pale middle-aged white woman surpassed me. I entered and found Billy examining herself in the mirror. I began, "Billy, let me tell you something." She was still looking at her reaction, but she said, "Oh, that's all right about the song. You can't help how you sound. Most colored women sound alike, lest they trying to sound white." She started laughing. "Did you see that old bitch hit it out of here? I bumped into a woman just now. That was her. She was sitting on the toilet, and when I opened the door, she screamed at me, 'Shut that door.' I screamed right back, 'Bitch, if you wanted it shut, you should have locked the goddamn thing.' Then she comes out of there and asks me, 'Ain't you Billie Holiday?' I told her, 'Bitch, I didn't ask you your name. You should have seen her fly.' She laughed again, grinning into the mirror. I said, 'Billy, you know that woman might have been an old-time fan of yours.' She turned, holding on to Peppy and her purse and her jacket. 'You know when you introduced me, you know how all those crackers stood up. You know why they were standing up.' I said they were honoring her. She said, 'Shit, you don't know a damn thing. They were all standing up, looking around. They wanted to see a nigger who had been in jail for dope. I'm going to tell you one more thing. You want to be famous, don't you?' I admitted I did. 'You're going to be famous, but it won't be for singing. Now, wait, you already know you can't sing all that good, but you're going to be real famous. Well, you better start asking yourself right now, when I get famous, who can I trust? All crackers is bad and niggers ain't much better. Just take care of your son. Keep him with you and keep on telling him he's the smartest thing God made. Maybe he'll grow up without hating you. Remember Billie Holiday told you, you can't get too high for somebody to bring you down.' Outside, I found a taxi for her. A few months later, she died in a New York hospital. All the jazz and rhythm and blues stations had oily voice commentators extolling the virtues of the great artist whose like would not be seen or heard again. Jazz busts with glorious vocabularies wrote long and often boring tributes to the pulchritudinous Lady Day, her phrasing and incredibly intricate harmonics. I would remember forever the advice of a lonely sick woman with a waterfront mouth who sang pretty songs to a 12-year-old boy. For weeks after Billy's visit, Guy treated me coolly. Neither of us mentioned the shouting scene, but he acted as if I had betrayed him. I had allowed a stranger to shout and curse at him and had not come to his defense. School semester was drawing to a close, and when I asked him whether he wanted to go to summer school or camp, or just stay home and hike the canyons, he answered, from the distance of endurance, that he had not made up his mind. It was obvious that our home life was not going to return to normal until he aired his grievance. 'Guy, what did you think of Billie Holiday?' 'She was oak.' 'I guess. That's all you thought?' 'Well, she sure cursed a lot. If she curses that way all the time, it's no wonder people don't like her.' 'So you didn't like her?' 'Anybody who curses all the time is stupid.' I had heard him use a few unacceptable words when talking in the backyard with his friend Tony. 'Guy, don't you use some bad words yourself?' 'But I'm a boy, and boys say certain things. When we go hiking or in the gym, we say things you're not supposed to say in front of girls, but that's different.' The Billie Holiday incident had hurt him more deeply than I had imagined. I planned a recovery scheme which would return my son to normal. First, I apologized to him. Then, for the next few days, I talked softly, prepared his favorite foods, took him out to the movies, and played cutthroat Scrabble with him until I had to leave for work. He was recuperating well when I received a telephone call from his school. 'Miss Angelou, I am a counselor at Marvelin School, and we don't think Guy should ride the school bus next semester.' 'You don't think? What we and why not?' 'The principal, a few teachers, and we've discussed his actions. And we agree. What action? What did he do? Well, he used profanity on the school bus. I'll be right there. Oh, there's no need. I hung up the telephone. When I walked into the principal's office and saw the welcoming committee, I felt 20 feet tall and as black as midnight. 2 white women and a tiny balding white man rose from their seats as I entered. I said good morning and introduced myself. Really, Miss Angelou, the situation did not warrant your making a trip to the school. The puny-looking man extended his hand. I'm Mr. Baker, Guy's counselor, and I know he is not a bad boy. Not really. I looked at the woman who had not spoken. It would be better to let them all have their say. One woman said, I teach English, and one of my students reported the incident to me this morning. I'd like to know what happened. The English teacher spoke with deliberation, as if she were testing the taste of the words. As I understand it, a conversation had been going on a particular topic. When the bus stopped at your corner, Guy boarded it and joined the conversation. He then gave explicit details on that particular subject. When the bus arrived at school, a couple of the girls were crying, and they came to me and reported Guy's behavior. And what did Guy say? What was his excuse? The second woman broke her silence. We have not spoken to Guy. We thought there was no reason to embarrass him. You mean to say you have simply assumed that to be accused is to be guilty, and so you are ready to deny him the right of using the school bus, which is paid for with my taxes, without hearing his side? I want to see Guy, and I want to see him now. I don't know why I thought white teachers would be fair to a Negro child. I want to hear what Guy has to say. And now, the moment of confrontation brought about an unexpected metamorphosis. The 3 teachers, who had seemed individually small and weak, shifted and swam together, coalescing into one unit, 3 bodies with one brain. Their faces hardened, their eyes hardened. We do not interrupt students during class for anyone. And we do not make a student a special case just because he happens to be Negro. And we do not allow Negro boys to use foul language in front of our girls. The 2 women stood silent and approving. Mr. Baker spoke for them as well as for white people everywhere. The impossibility of the situation filled my mouth with bitter saliva. How could I explain a young black boy to a grown man who had been born white? How could the 2 women understand a black mother who had nothing to give her son except a contrived arrogance? If I had an eternity and the poetry of old spirituals, I could not make them live with me the painful moments when I tried to prove to Guy that his color was not a cruel joke, but a healthful design. If they knew that I described God to my son as looking very much like John Henry, wouldn't they think me blasphemous? If he was headstrong, I had made him so. If in his adolescent opinion he was the best representative of the human race, it was my doing, and I had no apology to make. The radio and posters, newspapers and teachers, bus drivers and salespersons told him every day in thousands of ways that he had come from nothing and was going nowhere. Mr. Baker, I understand you. Now I'd like to see Guy. I kept my voice low and under control. If we take him out of class, you'll have to take him home. We do not interrupt classes. That is our policy. Yes, I'll take him home. He'll be marked absent for the day. But I guess that doesn't matter. Mr. Baker, I'll take my son home. I had to see Guy to hear him speak. Nothing would be gained by further conversation. He would have to return to the school, but for the moment, I wanted to know that he was not broken or even bruised. I'll wait for him outside. Thank you. Guy jumped into the car, his face active with concern. What's the matter, Mom? I told him about the meeting with the teachers. He relaxed. Aw, gee, Mom, and you came to school for that? It was nothing. Some of those kids are so stupid. They were talking about where babies come from. They said some of the funniest things, and they should know better. So I told them about the penis and the vagina and the womb. You know, all that stuff in my book on the beginnings of life? Well, some of the crazy girls started crying when I said their fathers had done it to their mothers. He began to laugh, enjoying the memory of the girl's tears. That's all I said. I was right, wasn't I? Sometimes it's wiser to be right in silence, you know? He looked at me with the suspicion of youth. But you always say, speak up. Tell the truth, no matter what the situation. I just told the truth. Yes, honey. You just told the truth. 2 days later, Guy brought home a message which infuriated me. My son was reasonably bright, but he had never been more than a competent student. The letter he brought home, however, stated that due to his wonderful grades, he had been advanced and would be attending another school at the end of the term. The obvious lie insulted both my son and me, but I thought it wise to remove Guy from the school as soon as possible. I didn't want an already prejudiced faculty and administration to use him as their whipping boy. I began searching for another school and another house. We needed an area where black skin was not regarded as one of nature's more unsightly mistakes. The Westlake district was ideal. Mexican, Black American, Asian, and white families lived side by side in old rambling houses. Neighbors spoke to each other as they mowed their lawns or shopped in the long-established local grocery stores. I rented the second floor of a 2-story Victorian, and when Guy saw the black children playing on our new street, he was giddy with excitement. His reaction made me see how much he had missed the close contact with black people. Boy, he jumped and wriggled. Boy, now I'm going to make some friends.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South.
Context of White Supremacy, Katherine Massey Book Club, audio segment 1. If you have commentary to share, the number 605-313-5164, the code 564-943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I have such a feeling of deja vu with this book, like, oh wow, great choice for the book club. Wait a minute, I picked this book because Patrice Lumumba is all over the text. He hasn't even been mentioned yet, and I don't think he'll be mentioned this week at all. Just like with Andrée Blouin's book, My Country, Africa. Took a while for Patrice Lumumba to become the main character in the book, or certainly one of the main characters in the book. Lots of constructive information en route. I think even a lot of parallel. I think there's even Dr. Angelou was with tragic arrangement situation in there as well along the way too. So lots of parallels between these two. We can do a comparison contrast like the grown literary scholars do between these two memoirs that are kind of the same time period. Like there are probably some English majors maybe who have written, probably a lot of white female English majors who have done a comparison contrast of these two memoirs because they're the same time period and they're talking both about Patrice Lumumba. Might even be some people who've studied Congolese history and the assassination of Lumumba who've read these two books together, comparison contrast. Anyway, Katherine Massey Book Club, the number again, 605-313-5164, the code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. No tangents, no what you watched on TV and Netflix. I'm sure there are some great documentaries on Netflix and all of that. We are talking about the book, just the book. I'm not interested in what you saw on TV. If you have not been paying attention, shh. Alrighty, the email untiljustice@gmail.com. Ode to Billie Holiday. I did not know that she was going to pop into the book, and much less pop into the book so early in such a poignant manner. But hey, Billie Holiday, right in. And then the whole parenting, just wow, so much. Parenting was a big part, like the relationship between Andrée Blouin and her mother, Josephine. That was a big part of the last book. See, that's why I say it's lots of parallels between the two. Star 61 for folks who have commentary. Let me see, do folks who dialed in or wrote in. Hopefully, if you are over the holidays listening, you can sit comfortably, make hot chocolate, vegan, of course. Maybe I'll share my hot chocolate recipe. I had some yesterday. Wow. Stopped me in my tracks. Wow. Anyway, get a good mug of hot chocolate or tea. I had tea today. Whatever. Even warm water. Get comfortable. Blanket. Sit quietly. Do a little reading. The late, great Dr. Angelou encouraged. Do a little reading. Maybe do a lot of reading. That is sorely needed for victims of white supremacy, individuals classified as black. Let us see. We'll nab. I'm trying to decide email or callers. We'll get one of the folks who dialed in first, and then we will read our emails as well. Untiljustice@gmail.com. Untiljustice@gmail.com. If we have any folks who were alive and joined us to participate constructively when we read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, definitely share. I can put my hand up. Me, I was here. In fact, I can even give one quick parallel. Dr. Angelou must have been like a boxing fan during her life, which would not be surprising because that was like the sport during her, especially during her formative like childhood years, and even during the time of this book. During the time of this book, that's flipping Muhammad Ali. I think she was at some of the Muhammad Ali fights, in fact. So, I mean, yeah, she was a boxing fan, and even way prior to that, she was a boxing fan. And she talked about, before we get to Muhammad Ali, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, she wrote about the great Sugar Ray Robinson. Not Sugar Ray Robinson. Oh, yes, I did get it right. The first time, because she talks about the fight between Max Schmeling and Sugar Ray Robinson. Both times she talks about the fight, and oh man, when he wins the second time, and how much it meant, and blah blah blah, and black dude being heavyweight champion of the world, and all the rest of it, like big deal. She wrote about Joe Louis. I got confused about my black fighter. Sorry about that. Max Schmeling and Joe Louis. She did get to Sugar Ray Robinson eventually, but Joe Louis. I mixed up my black fighters. Apologies. Joe Louis, Detroit legend. Now, illiterate text cheat. Now, she talked and wrote about Joe Louis, and even they have documentary films on Joe Louis. Maya Angelou is in the documentary. talking about her memories, because it's so vivid in the book where she writes. They didn't have the big, televisions that were, 20 feet tall and all the rest of it. They were listening on a crackly radio. She even talks about how some of the race soldiers in the area, if the black people behaved themselves, maybe the white people would let them come and listen to the Joe Louis fight on their radio. And she said that they would have to come and be real somber, quiet, no cutting up, acting a fool, and whoop, hollering and all that. And she said that if Joe Louis won, they would file it. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you. Have a blessed evening. Thank you. Thank you. And they shuffle flag again. She was in like Missouri and Arkansas. She was not in San Francisco. So she's not a San Francisco native. This is back, Michael Brown territory. So, as was Billie Holiday. So she said they would file away, and then once they got a safe distance and they're back in Negrotown, whoa, that Joe Louis, whoa, you whop that, they could cut loose and act a fool. She loved some boxing, so I'm not surprised at all. You could probably track a wealth of heavyweight fighters and just see what some of Dr. Angelou's commentary, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, Sonny Liston, like some of the prime folks from that Joe Frazier. Hey, Floyd Mayweather fought in San Francisco. She may have seen, the pretty boy. I don't know if she's remained a boxing fan throughout her life, but maybe. Any hoodles. Okay, we'll get some of the folks who dialed in, and then we'll get folks who wrote in as well. Folks with a hand up, if you have commentary to share, lines should be open. Proceed.
May I be heard?
Lauren, dialing in with us. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Actually, it seems like this book, it seems like it's going to be interesting. I kind of wasn't that excited. I don't know why when you said this was going to be the book choice, but the beginning, it's gotten off to a good start. I got a question. That voice, it's a pretty strong and sassy. Is that an AI voice?
That is an AI voice, not the same AI voice that I used for Andrée Blouin, right? I didn't want it to be the same to, different continents and all that. But yes, AI generated. And again, hopefully we will be transitioning soon and we'll have Dr. Angelou reading her own work.
Okay. So right at the beginning of the reading, the text did describe Althea Gibson as rangy. I was not familiar with that word, but it says tall and slim with long, slender limbs. And then it said the year's popular book was Jack Kerouac's On the Road. That's pretty interesting. I just read that book like 2 weeks ago. That's another thing that makes me think I should be reading this book right now. Porgy and Bess was mentioned, so I wasn't super familiar with that, but I heard Dr. Welsing mention that. Isn't that I think that's the same one where they're like, they don't have anything but nothing is fine with me or something like that. I don't know, made me think about Dr. Welsing. She said her commune mates, an ichthyologist, a musician, a wife, and an inventor were white, and they had been political, which they were not. Well, anyway, I had to look up ichthyologist. Apparently, it's a branch of zoology that deals with fish. So that's pretty cool. I've learned like 2 new words. She said, strangely, the houseboat offered me respite from racial tension and gave my son an opportunity to be around whites who did not think of him as too exotic to need correction, nor so common as to be ignored. Man, I kind of didn't know what to make of that. But VGQ, I did highlight it, so I guess I thought it was notable. When they moved into the house, she gets that, I thought they were white people. But when the landlord figures out what happened, he's like, I should have known, you dirty Jew, you bastard, you. I think when the white man called the other person a dirty Jew, that means he's not white, or he doesn't consider him white. And she said, we laughed nervously and carried my furniture into the house. I would have been nervous too, man. That's a scary situation. The Billie Holiday coming to the house, that did not go the way I expected it to go at all. You know, her profanity, and I would like to say, I didn't think the profanity was gratuitous. It was just like a realistic depiction of what happens. And she said she didn't like children and, you know, called them crumb crushers. And I was like, oh, man, this is going to be an issue. Well, when the little boy gets home, she really seems to like him, and I did too. Like, just the way he was written, he was so, he just seemed really courteous, curious, and he seemed kind of funny too. Like, the sections where he was talking so fast, and it kind of made me smile, you know, just the way children can be so likable when you like them anyway. And let me see. Oh, man. When she was singing Strange Fruit, and he asked, what's a pastoral theme this holiday? I mean, her response, you know, she said it means when the crackers are killing the niggers, it means when they take a little nigger like you and snatch off his nuts and shove him down his goddamn throat. That's what it means. I was pretty surprised that she said that to him, right? But then she gets in the car and she's like, I didn't lie, did I? Did I lie on the crackers? What's wrong with telling the truth? And when she posed it like that, it kind of sounded like the little boy when he got in the car after she had to pick him up from school for, you know, talking to the white girls. And the profanity, I think, was a bit too much for a child, but she was being honest. And I think we should be honest with children when we talk to them about, well, all things, not just racism, you know, as much as they can handle. So I think the book is off to an excellent start, and that's all I have for now. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Dang, said she was not looking forward to no Dr. Angelou. Like, wow. Have you read any of her other nonfiction?
I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, maybe in 2020.
Okay. All righty. Well, we'll see how it goes. Lumumba is coming, so, hey, lots more to learn. And I'm thinking with this time period, Minister Malcolm X should be coming too. Like, dang, if that is the case, like, wow, just wow. Excellent. Thumbs up choice and great follow to Andrée Blouin. And all of these books I really have to challenge myself to see now if I can pick out what parts of this book are in Soundtrack to Coup d'etat specific. I don't think anything that we've read thus far. We can keep rolling. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up.
Greetings, Mr. Renegade.
Yes, sir.
This is Fred Douglas. It's good to finally talk to you in person. Greetings to all the callers and listeners. I must say that I found on page 6 the dance metaphors that Maya Angelou used to be a little confusing in her description of racism and white supremacy. I also took the beatniks that she referenced as refined racists. Although it is early in the book, I noticed some similarities between Andrée Blouin and Maya Angelou and their mothers. It seemed, at least at this very early stage, that both mothers prioritized their appearances and wanted their children to live better lives than what they were currently living. I'm not a parent, but I wondered if Miss Angelou talked much to Guy about racism and white supremacy. And I was wondering that based on him spending the time with the white adults at the commune, and then when Billie Holiday sang Strange Fruit and spoke honestly but graphically about lynchings, the particular language she used might not have been age appropriate for him, but that was a real occurrence that would be of concern. And then the treatment of Guy at the school after he discussed how babies were conceived with his white classmates. And I was thinking, right around this time that, 2 black boys in North Carolina were arrested and beaten for rape after a white girl kissed them. So, just wondering the kind of conversations that she may have had with him about racism and white supremacy. Billie Holiday mentioned about all crackers is bad and niggers ain't much better. It seemed like a very, very hard lesson she learned over the course of her difficult life. Page 25, when the white teachers and guidance counselor came together to confront Miss Angelou about her son and his description of conception. It seemed like the Voltron effect was on full display there. And I was glad she removed him from the school because it seemed to me, as she thought also, the next thing would have had him punished much harsher the next time around if anything happened. And I did look up her son, Guy Johnson, and I was not aware of this, but he passed away in 2022 at the age of 77, which I guess is, a longer time than a lot of non-white black males, but definitely no Strom Thurmond. Thank you.
Come on now. He said no Strom Thurmond. Strom Thurmond lived to be over 100 years old, raping children all the way. 77, I mean, hey, that's, you don't get to be a centurion, but 77, like, hey, you got to, I'd even have to say that black male privilege right there, see? 77, you get to live close to 80 and might have been in good health. I think he might have been in the documentary with Dr. Angelou and Dave Chappelle. Like, man, he had good life. That's about as good as you can expect. As a privileged black male, live close to 80 years. Dr. Angelou is your mom. You go to school, travel a little bit, get some new clothes, have car insurance. Maybe a few people recognize you so you don't get shot and killed by police. I guess he didn't die by police at 77. Black male privilege. I made an error. Strive for accuracy. Billie Holiday, native of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is Josephine Baker that I was thinking of. That is a native like Maya Angelou of the Missouri area. I was getting my entertainers mixed up. But that's Josephine Baker. Got that Missouri connection with Maya Angelou. Much obliged. I thought the teacher scene was lots of what we heard was stunning for lots of reasons. We'll get to some of the folks who wrote in as well and then double check other callers also. Much obliged, Mr. Douglas. The number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Email number 1. Greetings, Gus, listeners, and callers. This text captured my interest from the first page. Me too. If not for having to engage in the Christmas Day festivities, you gotta have a teaspoon of eggnog with the family. I might have gotten through a good deal of this book in the first sitting. Looking forward to the rest of the text. Introduction. Exotheologist, think that's how you say it, study of fish. Suspected racist study everything. Who else could make a living in this field? Facts. Who else could go to the bottom of the ocean? Facts. 2. The far left and revolution. There was a time when I thought I knew what these terms meant. They are used so often. No longer. Amen. Hey, what the far left? The far right. Laurel Canyon, haven for a lot of popular white rock and roll musicians during the 1960s and 70s, also known for its illicit drug culture. Hey, white people and the drugs, narcotics. I asked Atara and Joe Morheim, a sympathetic white couple, to try and rent the house for me. I don't even know what that means. Sympathetic white couple. Like, what? You can even chop the couple off. Sympathetic white. What? They got like white Ivy League studies that say white people don't sympathize with niggers. Anyway, not much has changed except for more refined tactics. See, undervalued black homeowners fight for unbiased appraisals. Some of our guests, Negro, have had that same problem. And we talked about that specifically in Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns. Excellent. Her one constructive book, where she talks about how for some black people, this was a matter of life and death. You move into that house, you get a white family to move you in, they could bomb the house, they could tear it down with their fingers, pull out the toilets and plumbing, kill you in the process, like anything, burn the house down, anything. I mean, nothing to sneeze at, as they say, metaphor. 5. Lord shook hands with Joe, then looked over Joe's shoulder and recognized me. Shock, revulsion, recoil, snatched his hand away from Joe. You bastard. You will get in trouble with other white people for going off racist code. Absolutely. 6. Wilkie walked into my house and asked, do you want to meet Billie Holiday? This was certainly not the Billie Holiday portrayed by Dinah Ross in Lady Sings the Blues. Well, that's TV. 17. She told Guy she was going to sing Strange Fruit as her last song, based on a poem, lyrics, and song written by Abel Meeropol, suspected racist. He was inspired by Lawrence Beetler, 1930 photo of the lynching of Thomas Shipp and Abraham Smith in Marion, Indiana. Jim Jonesville. Meeropol was characterized as a communist, aren't we all, and was sympathetic to Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, who were executed for giving atomic secrets to the USSR during the 1950s. Meeropol adopted the orphaned children of the Rosenbergs. Fascinating. Pulchritudinous. Incidentally, I thought about this song like, yeah, I'm not really sure. Like, that's one of her, probably that is her most famous song. I think for most people in the world, if you said, Billie Holiday, give me one song that she sung, I think for most people, that's going to be the first one that they name. They might be able to go and give you St. Louis Blues and some other tracks or what have you, but I think for most people, Strange Fruit will be the first one to pop into mind. So if you're going to hang out with Billie Holiday for an amount of time and she is going to sing songs to you, like, I would say really of any age, like, man, and she didn't sing Strange Fruit? Like, what a bummer. Okay. So that was kind of one. I guess the other, I was kind of thinking the same thing, like, yeah, that is what it is. Like, chop your balls off and someone your age. And in fact, I was thinking now, like, for reals, Guy is almost the same age as Emmett Till. This is in 1957. That is 2 years after this was done to Emmett Till. So, I mean, man, and even the language, I mean, what's more coarse than chopping off Emmett Till's testicles? They say that didn't happen, but I mean, close enough. Gouge out his eyes and all the rest of it, split his skull. What's more, grotesque than all of that? MFer? Like, really? Really? So I kind of struggled with, you don't want to mess up somebody's nightmare, but I mean, a lot of sleep. Billie Holiday, I'm having sleepless nights myself. Age appropriate, Mr. Fuller does have that in the 10 stops, no cursing, so, no profanity. No profanity. I don't sanitize lynchings, though. We've had too much. That's a big part of the problem. 8, pulchritudinous, physically beautiful. She does have a vocabulary, Dr. Angelou. 9, the moment of confrontation brought about an unexpected metamorphosis. The 3 teachers who had seemed individually small and weak shifted and swam together, coalescing into one unit, 3 bodies with one brain. The Voltron effect at its best. Facts. For folks who maybe are newer listeners, that is a metaphor that Gus T created years ago, long time, to describe how white people One of the reasons they are so powerful, it will generally not just be one individual white people. They individually will form and work together, whether that's supporting one other white person's lie or supporting the anonymity of race soldiers for years, like who lynched all these black people and purged the town. That's like lots of different ways. You go to the school and all the white people work together to make sure this white teacher doesn't get fired. Lots of different ways white people work together to practice white supremacy racism. You start off thinking it's just going to be you and this other white person. No, no, no. It's going to be a whole gang, army of white people working together. For us, it's often the exact opposite. Another story. Let's see. Well, some of the crazy girls started crying. Crazy? No, just racist. They probably knew those terms better than God. They just took offense that it was coming from him. Emmett Till, duh. Alrighty, let's see. We'll pause there. I'll nab a few of my thoughts and then see if any other listeners have thoughts they would like to share before we get to audio section 2. Okay, going back to the beginning. She has a mighty dedication of folks for the book who influenced and helped her get this here text together. Whoopee to all of them. Let's see. When she says we were, and she says we for the United States, we were a moverin', to, fro, up, down, often in concentric circles. I have no idea what that means. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, metaphors. And I know she does poetry and all that. I'm not a poetry fan. What are you talking about? Was there an earthquake? Was there a dance? Like, what are you talking about? She continues, maybe we'll get the details. We created a maze of contradictions. Who is the we? Black and white Americans danced a fancy and often dangerous do-si-do. What? What? Are you talking about the system of white supremacy? And even really slow down. So I just said Emmett Till, that's 1955. Click forward 2 years. Now the big one for 1957, Little Rock, Arkansas. Now we read about that. Signature Cows material. Were you really? Autobiography Kings. Melba Pattillo Beals, Warriors Don't Cry. And really, we doubled down on that one because we read Elizabeth and Hazel next, which is basically double biography about those two. Well, one white student, race soldier, and then Elizabeth Eckford. But that's 1957, as she kind of briefly mentions. That's not a dance. That's a whole town. What I just said, Voltron, that's a whole town of white people that come out to taunt and even kill black children, any other black people who happen to be present. That is not a dance. I think if you had went and asked any of those Little Rock 9 black people, Melba Pattillo Beals, any of the other black people who were present at that time, Daisy Bates, adult who was helping to organize, victim of white supremacy, if you had asked even Bill Clinton, pride of Arkansas, Bill, was this a dance? Or was this, hey, was this terrorism? You got to call in the National Guard. Words are important, monumentally important. Let's see. In the steps forward, abrupt turns, sharp spins, and reverses, we became our own befuddlement. Race soldiers are not confused, befuddled, none of the above about what they're doing. Not at all. The country hailed Elizabeth Gibson, even that because it's so general. It cannot be in 1957 that everybody in the country hailed Althea Gibson for playing tennis. You on everything. What I say, we are the biography kings. We read King Richard, black and white, the way I see it. That was almost a decade before that movie came out. If she was hailed in 1957, things would have been way better and different for Serena and Venus almost a half century later. They were not. They were not. So I know it cannot be everybody. That's, wow, this Althea Gibson is. Matter of fact, I talk about reading current book. They had 2 biographies that just came out about Althea Gibson. I got both of them said, ooh, I was thinking we should get, one of the authors as a guest on the program, even though I don't get that excited about entertainment, but I was thinking like, hey, we've, talked about tennis. That's not exactly just sitting around talking about brain damaged football all the time, but man, come on. First black President Allison, okay, Black for Children, even that deserved, like, man, that was, anyway, Strom Thurmond, that's another one. Now I'm going to assume that Maya Angelou didn't know, but Strom Thurmond, if he's going to be mentioned at all, race soldier who did all of that, and we read Dear Senator. Was it 2 years ago? Dear Senator, where he's out raping black child, Essie Mae Washington Williams, offspring of all that child rape. And then see how I said it's so consistent, where you get people who write about J. Strom Thurmond, they don't mention him as a child rapist at all. This was widely known. It's not like we're gossiping here. Dear Senator, fantastic book, is what reminded me of the last book we read. Strom Thurmond, right? Okay, Sugar Ray Robinson, I said that about the boxing, way more popular at the time. I too thought of Dr. Welsing with Porgy and Bess, a movie about black people who have nothing, and Dr. Welsing talked about this, or it was a play at the time. I think it is a movie now. But Dr. Welsing talked about this movie and saying that this is the sort of entertainment that is promoted for black people. This is the role that we should be happy with. I think she said that one of the songs in this play that is infamous or famous, that is beloved by white people, I got plenty of nothing, and nothing is plenty for me. He said that's the position that black people are supposed to be in and should be happy with as victims of white supremacy. Absurd. She said that pattern continues, whether it's Raisin in the Sun, Boys in the Hood, where you just see lots and lots of that. Black people in these really terrible conditions, and they make songs about it. Precious, they'll make songs about it. Hustle and flow, rap about it, be jolly about it, make the best of it, whatever. Good times, you mentioned that yesterday. Lots and lots of iterations of that down through the decades. She lived on a houseboat in Sausalito, and in a commune with this ichthyologist, musician, and an inventor, all white, revolutionaries and far lefties. The first two words that came to my mind: Jim Jones. She was right close to where the People's Temple. Man, she should have had something to say about that too. She was right there. Maybe she will. I don't know. But she should have had something to say about People's Temple too, because she was right there. Anyway, that's the first word that came to my mind. Like, it does not take very much at all for a white person to do, hey, this is a right on. Charlie is all right, man. He doesn't shower but once every other month. And he is as radical and as far left. I mean, he makes Bernie Sanders seem tame, man. He got that long hair, and he went to Cal Berkeley for 6 months before he dropped out. And, ooh-wee, you don't know nothing like Charlie, boy. Quote Malcolm X from time to time, too. Boy, Charlie is tough. Drink kombucha with him every Thursday. That is widespread. Widespread. Commune mates, are you serious? And the house, she said, strangely, the houseboat offered me respite from racial tensions. What? If anybody here can find a so-called respite from racial tensions, i.e. the system of white supremacy racism, let me know immediately. Maybe we can all just move there and we can reconvene. Maybe we don't need the cows anymore. We'll just hang out there and, see if race soldiers will leave us alone in our respite from racial tension. Much less you go hang out with white people on a houseboat. What? Even though I've heard this one before. I've heard where they go and they get in some sort of tragic arrangement with a white person, which I think Dr. Angelou had done previously. They go and get in some sort of tragic arrangement with a white person, and they say, man, it's just freer and less tension and more relaxed with my good white person, male or female. I've heard this. It's almost kind of cliche. So, we've escaped some of the pressures of racism. What? Even if they are the sweetest, kindest, most courteous, well-meaning white person ever. I mean, what? At best, this is confusion. I mean, at best. The hippie commune, and even where she said, and gave my son an opportunity to be around whites who did not think of him as too exotic to need correction, nor so common to be ignored. I don't even, what? I don't even, what? I don't know. And then particularly when I put that where she says, in less than a year of the commune, I began to yearn for privacy, wall-to-wall carpets, and that, I don't know. And manicure, that also gave me pause. Like, now, wait a minute. Now, I'm all for, hygiene and even femininity. That is great. But I mean, really, no offense to anyone who's got to get a manicure. Guy was becoming rambunctious and young animal wild in the white commune? Really? He was taking fewer baths than I thought healthy, and because my friends treated him like a young adult, the white friends, I suspect, he was forgetting his place in the scheme of our mother-son relationship. That right there, that is fascinating. Among other aspects, but I mean, even if that wasn't there, it would still be, what? In the white commune these are revolutionary far-left white people in California? What? Jim Jones or Charles Manson. Danger. Bill Ayer, danger. Are they in the SLA? Danger. Like, get away from me. Let's see. The few black people who lived in Laurel Canyon, including Billy Eckstein, Billy Daniels, and Herb Jeffries, were rich, famous, and light-skinned enough to pass, at least for Portuguese. Now, Andrée Blouin just told us about how racist the Portuguese were in Africa, so I don't even, but, man, that name, Billy Eckstein, wowzers. I'm not a Billy Eckstein fan, this former crooner, but I do know he may have been light-skinned. He's not light-skinned enough. Neely Fuller Jr. told me years ago, and I think this was literally right days of the cows coming into existence, 2007. Mr. Fuller said, Billy Eckstein, he was a crooner, was going to have a great career, had a great voice, all of that, kind of like complexion. Someone took a photograph of him. That's what I said about Althea Gibson. There's no way, because she is way darker than Billy Eckstein, so it can't be that the whole country was, woo, get him out there, woo, put her on the Wheaties box, and get out of here. And this for tennis? Are you serious? Anyway, Billy Eckstein, Mr. Fuller said they took this picture, and it was he's a crooner, and so the same thing. I did the white woman. You heard what happened to Guy. White woman came, Billy, and they took the picture, and that went all out. People saw that. It was downhill from there for Mr. Eckstein, meaning metaphor, meaning life was not good. Gonna have a hard time getting a cab, hard time getting a job, hard time singing a song. Ooh, if you don't get your raping Negro self out of here, old Billy Eckstein, pretending to be a white man. Mr. Fuller talked about that in detail, and then, lo and behold, NPR did a story on him about maybe a year or two ago that Fuller was like, as usual, deadly accurate. They got this picture and bang, racism and all the rest of it. Like, oh man, Billy Eckstein. He was light skinned, he was not that light. Let's see. She said she wanted desperately to live in the glamorous surroundings of, see, California. Essie Mae Washington, she went to California. I totally forgot about that. She ditched South Carolina and all that. Strom Thurmond buried her down there. They said, we're moving out to California. And she talked about how glamorous. Wow, it's amazing out here. Everybody loves California. Let's see. Sympathetic white couple. They're going to go move in. Let's see. So she gets in. We already talked about that. Nervously. She talks about being removed from her people. Now, even that, you're in this glamorous environment and all that, that's better where you get a house, but it's not very many other black people. That is for sure by design. And really, she's not supposed to be there. You're not even supposed to be. You are supposed to be removed. And if we have anything to do with it, we'll get you out of here soon. Let's see. So then Billie Holiday comes by to visit. Sobriety would be best. Let's see. Mr. Fuller, when she talked about all the cursing and such, Mr. Fuller does have that on the 10 stops. No cursing. And he talks about the reason for it and just being courteous when you talk to other people and not MFer, MFer, MFer. He, in fact, when she said experience with street people, hustlers, gamblers, and petty criminals had exposed me to cursing, years in nightclub dressing rooms and cabarets and juke joints had taught me every combination of profanity, or so I thought. Mr. Fuller said, that is us. Got every derivation of MFer. Dr. Wells didn't even talk. We got every derivation of it in the world. Adjective, adverb, noun, gerund, whatever. The MFer and MFing and MFers and MFing and MFing and boop, boop, boop. Yep, that is for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. No cursing is in the 10 stops. Let's see. I fell out a little bit. I had my the help moment. That would qualify as another one, I think, where black people have plenty of nothing, and nothing is good enough for me. I'm supposed to celebrate and be happy that I can be a maid and cook fried chicken for a white woman for the rest of my life. Whoopee! But I had my help moment when Billie Holiday is like, I don't want to stay here. Okay, well, maybe you make something to eat. I'm hungry. He says, I'm going to make chicken. She says, make sure you cook it all the way. I don't want any raw chicken. And Maya Angelou has like tolerated some of her insolence. And when she gets to the chicken, she says, wait a minute. I have had it up to here. I know how to fry chicken. You're not going to come in and impugn my skills with the skillet. Now, if you're going to keep talking all this, you can get your fried chicken elsewhere. And then she said, like, all right, I'm just saying I don't do no raw chicken. Woo, Minnie, the help. Let's see. Maya hides out in the kitchen. Billie Holiday curses and she name calls black people. Not cool. I didn't know what a CC camp was. I had to stop and look that up. CC camp is the Civilian Conservation Corps, as part of the New Deal program to help lift the United States white people out of the Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt established the Civilian Conservation Corps in 1933. The CCC, or C's as it was sometimes known, allowed single men, probably single white men, the ages of 18 to 25, to enlist in work programs to improve America's public lands, forests, and parks. So with that, I said, wow, that sounds kind of homoerotic, because I'd never heard that before. So I'm as happy as a sissy in a CCC camp. Wow, I guess the chicken was really good. And then she's got homoerotic. Even that's not a G-rated joke. Like, we got children. She sounds like someone who has worked in a nightclub her whole life. Right on. And then she says, Billie looked up from her drink and said, speak for yourself. All I got to do is stay black and die. That used to be a very popular phrase for a long time. I'm very glad if that has been retired, because that's another one I have no idea what that means. All you have to do is stay black. What does one do to stay black? And I'm going to be truthful. If you could itemize that, I'm going to make sure I never, like, I wouldn't care what's on that list. If you say, hey, you got to eat Brussels sprouts to stay black. I love me some Brussels sprouts. I would never eat them again and would curse them every time I see them in the store. But I really have no idea what that means. Don't be like Michael Jackson. I'm going to assume you mean the skin pigmentation part? No idea. Let's see. Oh, Guy is so funny here. Asking lots of questions. Seems like he does a little bit of reading, current events, knows about how Miss Holliday's abused by the police and her struggles with sobriety. Sobriety would be best. Let's see. They sing Sage Fruit. Talked about that. Let's see. They go to the club. I do appreciate the white woman in the bathroom where I guess she saw her and was like, hey, aren't you, Billie Holiday's B-word? I didn't know that she even name called, which I do appreciate. You're going to name call, then you got to name call everybody, even random white people, And I also appreciate Billie Holiday being honest, like, hey, these white people, it is not some, oh, we love Billie Holiday. It's, oh, there's that drug addict negress. Let's see Billie. She, she was in jail doing the smack, I so appreciate just being honest. I know what it is, and I'm not going to lie to myself. And I'm going to try to share this with other black people as they go through, like, man, these white people, man. I did get a kick out of that. Let's see. And then she dies a few months later. That would, like, wow. Like, I wouldn't even, that would be stunning. Yeah, that would be stunning for a lot of reasons. The whole school situation, again, I don't have children, but wow, that's why I'd be honest with your children about racism. And then, is this the best we're going to do? We've had so many generations of this. They would have had him on medication or remedial, or they got the security. Maybe they would have had the security officer would have had zip ties on him at school and put him in a special. Who knows? It could have been a variety of things. But I mean, hey, this is what it's been for decades and decades. Again, is this the best we're going to do? Continue to put our children in these types of environments and hope for the best with white educators, white women. She had a whole gang of white women. Same thing it is now, nigh on 2030. That's the best we can do. Let's see. She said, Mr. Baker spoke for them all, as well as for white people everywhere. I thought that was a powerful line. Like, wait a minute, I thought not all white people were racist. Maybe he didn't speak for the white people in the commune. He said, not in our name, man. Not in our name. Not at the commune. Anyway, and then they move along. We'll see how things proceed at Westlake. But those are my notes from the first chunk. I guess before we push off to audio section 2, I'll make sure I didn't miss anyone. Did stay black and die? Does anyone know how we stay? Does anybody say that? Stay black and die? Does anybody say that or know what one has to do in order to stay black?
I used to say that, Gus, but I don't know what you do to stay black.
She said she used to say. That's when you should have a list. If you're saying it right, it should be. You got to, eat black-eyed peas, or quote Don Cornelius, or do the elect something. You got to watch Boys in the Hood every 5 years, or something. It should be something on the list that you got to do to fight racism. Maybe see, that's another one. If that was taught you got to stay black. Now, what does that mean? It means replace white supremacy with justice, you coon. Say, oh, well, my fault. Let me stop cooning. Yes, stay black. That's right. Replace race. That's what. They don't say that. Let's see. Anybody else that they figure out? What does stay black and die? What does that, or really it's just the doing part. What are you supposed to do or not do so that you make sure you are staying black? Staying black. Staying black. Whew, man. Colored folks. We will get to audio section number 2. I'm going to have to go get those autobiographies on Althea Gibson, because I know that is like a bald face, and that's not no, disparaging. I'm doing what Dr. Angelou said. Read. And those, as I said, autobiographies are very new. They were published like a decade after Dr. Angelou passed, so maybe a lot of this information wasn't known, but I'm very, very sure Althea Gibson was not celebrated by the country in general, or even a large swath of people. I'm sure she faced lots of fights. Same thing, Maya Angelou trying to get that house. Oh my God, you dirty niggers, we'll kill you. Oh my God, you dirty niggers, how dare you beat our white women? We'll kill you. Anywho, I know what they did to Serena and Venus, so it couldn't have been much better for Althea Gibson. Staying black, not black and proud, stay black and die. All you have to do is stay black and die. You got a song, stay black, stay black, stay black, stay black. You got a lot, stay black. Anyway, moving along. Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy, The Heart of a Woman, audio segment 2.
Chapter 1. For the next year and a half, save for my short out-of-town singing engagements, we lived in the area. Guy became a part of a group of teenagers whose antics were rambunctious enough to satisfy their need to rebel, yet were acceptable to the tolerant neighborhood. I began to write. At first, I limited myself to short sketches, then to song lyrics, then I dared short stories. When I met John Killens, he had just come to Hollywood to write the screenplay for his novel Youngblood, and he agreed to read some of what he called my work in progress. I had written and recorded 6 songs for Liberty Records, but I didn't seriously think of writing until John gave me his critique. After that, I thought of little else. John was the first published black author I had really talked with. I'd met James Baldwin in Paris in the early 50s, but I didn't really know him. John said, "Most of your work needs polishing. In fact, most of everybody's work could stand rewriting, but you have undeniable talent." He added, "You ought to come to New York. You need to be in the Harlem Writers Guild." The invitation was oblique, but definitely alluring. I had met singer Abby Lincoln. We met years earlier, and we became friends during the time I stayed in the Westlake district. But she had moved to New York City. Whenever I spoke to her on the telephone after she stopped praising Max Roach, her love and romantic ideal, she lauded New York City. It was the hub, the absolute middle of the world. The only place for an intelligent person to be and to grow. Just possibly if I went to New York, I thought I could find my own niche, settle down in it, and become a success. There was another reason for wanting to leave Los Angeles. Guy, once so amusing, was growing into a tall, aloof stranger. Our warm evenings of Scrabble and charades were, for him, a part of the long ago. He said the childhood games simply did not hold his attention. When he obeyed my house rules, he did so with the attitude that he was just too bored to contest them. I didn't understand at the time that adolescence had invaded him and deposited its usual hefty burden of insecurity and apprehension. My wispy-sometimes lover, who lived nearby, was too tediously pious to help me comprehend what was happening to my son. Indeed, his reverence for Eastern religions, a vegetarian diet, and sexual abstinence rendered him almost, but not quite, incapable of everything except deep conversations on the meaning of life. I called my mother, and she answered after the first ring. "Hello, lady? Oh, hello, baby." She spoke as crisply as a white woman. I said, "I'd like to see you. I'm going to move to New York, and I don't know when I'll come back to California." Maybe we could meet somewhere and spend a couple of days together. I could drive north part of the way. She didn't pause. Of course, we can meet. Of course, I want to see you, baby. 6 feet tall with a 14-year-old son, and I was still called baby. How about Fresno? That's halfway. We could stay at that hotel. I know you read about it. Yes, but not if there's going to be trouble. I just want to be with you. Trouble? Trouble? The familiar knife edge had slipped into her voice. But, baby, you know that's my middle name. Anyway, the law says the hotel has to accept Negro guests. I'll swear before God and 5 other responsible men that my daughter and I are Negroes. After that, if they refuse us, well, she laughed hopefully and high-pitched. Well, we'll have a board to fit their butts. That part of the conversation was finished. Vivian Baxter sensed the possibility of confrontation, and there would be no chance of talking her out of it. I realized too late that I should simply have taken the Southern Pacific train from Los Angeles to San Francisco and spent the 2 days in her Fulton Street house, then returned to pack for my continental move. Her voice softened again as she relayed family gossip and set a date for our meeting in the middle of the state. In 1959, Fresno was a middling town with palm trees and a decidedly Southern accent. Most of its white inhabitants seemed to be descendants of Steinbeck's Jodes, and its black citizens were farmhands who had simply exchanged the dirt roads of Arkansas and Mississippi for the dusty streets of Central California. I parked my old Chrysler on a side street and, taking my overnight case, walked around the corner to the Desert Hotel. My mother had suggested that we meet at 3, which meant that she planned to arrive at 2. The hotel lobby had been decorated with welcome banners for a visiting sales convention. Large florid men mingled and laughed with portly women under low-hanging chandeliers. My entrance stopped all action. Every head turned to see, every eye blazed, awed with doubt, then fury. I wanted to run back to my car, race to Los Angeles, back to the postered walls of my house. I straightened my back and forced my face into indifference and walked to the registration desk. The clock above said to 45. Good afternoon. Where is the bar? A round-faced young man dropped his eyes and pointed behind me. Thank you. The crowd made an aisle, and I walked through the silence, knowing that before I reached the lounge door, a knife could be slipped in my back or a rope lassoed around my neck. My mother sat at the bar wearing her Dobbs hat and tan suede suit. I set my case down inside the door and joined her. Hi, baby. Her smile was a crescent of white. You're a little early. She knew I would be. Jim? And I knew she'd already have the bartender's name and his attention. The man grinned for her. Jim, this is my baby. She's pretty, isn't she? Jim nodded, never taking his eyes away from Mother. She leaned over and kissed me on the lips. Give her a scotch and water and another little taste for yourself. She caught him as he started to hesitate. Don't refuse, Jim. No man can walk on one leg. She smiled, and he turned to prepare the drinks. Baby, you're looking good. How was the drive? Still got that old Chrysler? Did you see those people in the lobby? They're so ugly they make you stop and think. How's Guy? Why are you going to New York? Is he happy about the move? Jim set my drink down and lifted his in a toast. Mother picked up her drink. Here's looking at you, Jim. And to me. Here's a go, baby. She smiled, and I saw again that she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Thanks, Mother. She took my hands, put them together, and rubbed them. You are cold. Hot as it is, your hands are freezing. Are you all right? Nothing frightened my mother except thunder and lightning. I couldn't tell her that at 31 years old, the whites in the lobby had scared me silly. Just fine, Mother. I guess it's the air conditioning. She accepted the lie. Well, let's drink up and go to our room. I've got some talk for you. She picked up the bills from the bar, counted them, and pulled out to singles. What time do you come on, Jim? The bartender turned and grinned. I open up at 11 every morning. Then I'll break your luck for you. Scotch and water, remember. At 11. This is for you. Oh, you don't have to do that. Mother was on the stool. I know. That's why it's easy. See you in the morning. I picked up my suitcase, followed her out of the dark bar into the noisy lobby. Again, the buzz of conversation diminished, but Mother never noticed. She switched through the crowd, up to the desk. Mrs. Vivian Baxter Johnson and daughter, you have our reservation. My mother had married a few times, but she loved her maiden name. Married or not, she often identified herself as Vivian Baxter. It was a statement. And please call the bellboy. My bag is in my car. Here are the keys. Set your bag down here, baby. Back to the registration clerk. And tell him to bring my daughter's case to our room. The clerk slowly pushed a form across the counter. Mother opened her purse, took out her gold share, and signed us in. The key, please. Again, using slow motion, the clerk slid the key to Mother. To 10. Second floor. Thank you. Come on, baby. The hotel's color bar had been lifted only a month earlier, yet she acted as if she had been a guest there for years. There was a winding staircase to the right of the desk and a small group of open-mouthed conventioneers standing by the elevator. I said, "Let's take the stairs, Mother." She said, "We're taking the elevator," and pushed the up button. The waiting people looked at us as if our very presence had stripped everything of value from their lives. When we got out of the elevator, Mother took a moment, then turned and walked left to 210. She unlocked the door, and when we entered, she threw her purse on the bed and walked to the window. "Sit down, baby. I'm going to tell you something you must never forget." I sat on the first chair as she opened the drapes. The sunlight framed her figure, and her face was indistinct. Animals can sense fear. They feel it. Well, you know that human beings are animals, too. Never, never let a person know you're frightened. And a group of them. Absolutely never. Fear brings out the worst thing in everybody now. In that lobby, you were as scared as a rabbit. I knew it, and all those white folks knew it. If I hadn't been there, they might have turned into a mob. But something about me told them, if they mess with either of us, they better start looking for some new asses, 'cause I'd blow away what their mamas gave them. She laughed like a young girl. "Look in my purse." I opened her purse. The Desert Hotel better be ready for integration, 'cause if it's not, I'm ready for the Desert Hotel. Under her wallet, half hidden by her cosmetic case, lay a dark blue German Luger. "Room service? This is to 10. I'd like a pitcher of ice, 2 glasses, and a bottle of teacher's scotch." "Thank you." The bellboy had brought our bags, and we had showered and changed. "We'll have a cocktail and go down for dinner. But now, let's talk. Why New York? You were there in 52 and had to be sent home. What makes you think it has changed?" I met a writer, John Killens. I told him I wanted to write, and he invited me to New York. He's colored, isn't he? Since my first marriage to a Greek had dissolved, Mother had been hoping for a black son-in-law. "He's married, Mother." "It's not like that. That's terrible. First 99 married men out of 100 never divorce their wives for their girlfriends, and the one that does will probably divorce the new wife for a newer girlfriend. But really, it's not that way. I've met his wife and children. I'll go to New York, stay with them for a couple of weeks, get an apartment, and send for Guy. And where will he stay for the weeks? Not alone in that big house. He's only 14. She would explode if I told her I planned for him to stay with the man I was leaving. Vivian Baxter had survived by being healthily suspicious. She would never trust a rejected lover to treat her grandson fairly. I've made arrangements with a friend. And after all, it's only 2 weeks. We both knew that she had left me and my brother for 10 years to be raised by our paternal grandmother. We looked at each other and she spoke first. You're right. It is only 2 weeks. Well, let me tell you about me. I'm going to sea. To sea. See what? I'm going to become a merchant marine. I had never heard of a female merchant seaman. A member of the Marine Cooks and Stewards Union. Why? Disbelief raised my voice. Why? She was a surgical nurse, a realtor, had a barber's license, and owned a hotel. Why did she want to go to sea and live the rough and glamorous life of a seaman? Because they told me Negro women couldn't get in the Union. You know what I told them? I shook my head, although I nearly knew. I told them, you want to bet? I'll put my foot in that door up to my hip until women of every color can walk over my foot, get in that union, get aboard a ship, and go to sea. There was a knock at the door. Come in. A uniformed black man opened the door and halted in surprise at seeing us. Good evening. Just put the tray over there. Thank you. The bellboy deposited the tray and turned. Good evening. You all surprised me. Sure did. Didn't expect to see you. Sure didn't. Mother walked toward him holding money in her hand. Who did you expect? Queen Victoria? No. No, ma'am. I mean, our people. In here. It's kinda new seeing us. And everything. This is for you. She gave him the tip. We are just ordinary guests in the hotel. Thank you and good night. She opened the door and waited. When he walked out mumbling good night, she closed the door with finality. Mom, you were almost rude. Well, baby, I figure like this. He's colored and I'm colored, but we are not cousins. Let's have a drink. She smiled. During the next 2 days, Mother showed me off to some old card-playing friends she had known 20 years earlier. This is my baby. She's been to Egypt, all around Milan, Italy, and Spain and Yugoslavia. She's a singer and dancer, you know. When her friends were satisfactorily impressed with my accomplishments, Mother made certain of their wonder by adding, of course, I'll be shipping out myself in a few days. We hugged in the empty lobby of the Desert Hotel. The convention had ended the day before our departure. Take care of yourself. Take care of your son, and remember New York City is just like Fresno. Just more of the same people in bigger buildings. Black folks can't change because white folks won't change. Ask for what you want and be prepared to pay for what you get. She kissed me and her voice softened to a whisper. Let me leave first, baby. I hate to see the back of someone I love. We embraced again, and I watched her walk, hips swaying, into the bright street. Back at home, I collected myself and called Guy, who responded by coming into the living room and then walking back to lean against the door jamb. Guy, I want to talk to you. Please sit down. At this stage, he never sat if he could stand, towering above the boredom of life. He sat, obviously, to pacify me. Guy, we're going to move. Aha, a flicker of interest in his eyes, which he quickly controlled. Again? Okay, I can pack in 20 minutes. I've timed myself. I held on to the natural wince that struggled to surface. In his 9 years of schooling, we had lived in 5 areas of San Francisco, 3 townships in Los Angeles, New York City, Hawaii, and Cleveland, Ohio. I followed the jobs, and against the advice of a pompous school psychologist, I had taken Guy along. The psychologist had been white, obviously educated, and with those assets, I knew he was well-to-do. How could he know what a young Negro boy needed in a racist world? When the money was plentiful, we lived in swank hotels and called room service. At other times, we stayed in boarding houses. I strung sheets as room dividers and cooked our favorite food illegally on a 2-burner hot plate. Because we moved so often, Guy had little chance to make or keep friends, but we were together and generally we had laughed a lot. Now that post-puberty had laid claim to him, our friendly badinage was gone and I was menacing him with one more move. This is the last time. Last time, I think. His face said he didn't believe me. We're going to New York City. His eyes lit up again and just as quickly dulled. I want to leave Saturday. John and Grace Killens are looking for an apartment for us. I'll stay with them and in 2 weeks you'll join me. Is that all right? Parent power becomes so natural, only children notice it. I wasn't really asking his permission. He knew it and didn't answer. I thought I'd ask Ray if he'd like to stay in the house with you for the weeks. Just to be company for you. With you? That's perfectly all right, Mother. He stood up. He was so long, his legs seemed to start just at his arm sockets. If you'll excuse me. Thus he ended our unsatisfactory family chat. I still had to speak to my gentleman friend. As we sat close in the morning sunshine, Ray's handsome yellow face was as usual in benign repose. I'm leaving Saturday for New York. Oh? Got a contract? No, not yet. I don't think that I'd like to face New York without a contract. Here it was. Just Guy and I are going. We're going to stay. His whole body jumped. The muscles began to skitter around his face. For the first time, I thought that maybe he cared for me. I watched him command his body. After long minutes, his fist fell open, the long fingers relaxed, and his lips lost their hardened ridges. Is there anything I can do to help you? He consented to stay in the house and send Guy to me in 2 weeks. After, he might take the house himself, otherwise he would close it. Of course, we would remain friends. Chapter 2. John and Grace Killens lived with their 2 children and his mother in a roomy brownstone in Brooklyn. They accepted me as if I were a friend returning from a long journey. John met me at the door. Girl, you finally got out of the country. Kick the mud over your shoes, come inside and make yourself at home. Grace was quieter. Welcome to New York. I'm glad you came. Their hospitality was casual, without the large gestures that often discomfort a guest. The first days of my stay were filled with learning the house and studying the personalities of its inhabitants. John genuinely enjoyed being passionate. He was good-looking, and his dark brown eyes and a light brown face could alternately smolder or pierce. He talked animatedly, waving his hands as if offering them as gifts to his listeners. Grace was pretty and petite, but she never allowed John's success or the fact that she was his great love interfere with independent thought. John's mother, Mom Willie, who wore her southern background like a magnolia corsage, eternally fresh, was robust and in her 60s. She was one of the group of black women who had raised their children, worked hard, fought for her principles, and still retained some humor. She often entranced the family with graphic stories set in a sullen, racist South. The tales changed, the plots varied. Her villains were always white and her heroes upstanding, courageous, clever blacks. Barbara, the younger of the Killens children, was a bright tomboy who spoke fast and darted around the house like a cinnamon-colored wind. Her brother, John, larger and more gentle, moved slowly, spoke seldom, and seemed to have been burdened with the responsibility of pondering the world's imponderables. Everyone except John, whose nickname was Chuck, talked incessantly, and although I enjoyed the exchange, I found the theme inexplicably irritating. They excoriated white men, white women, white children, and white history, particularly as it applied to black people. I had spent my life on city front steps, in country backyards, kitchens, living rooms, and bedrooms, joining in and listening to the conversations of black people, but I had never heard so much attention given to the subject of whites. Of course, in Arkansas, when I was young, black children, knowing that whites owned the cotton gin, the lumber mill, the fine houses, and paved streets, had to find something which they thought whites did not possess. This need to have something all one's own coincided with the burgeoning interest in sex. The children sang beyond the ears of adults and wistfully. Whites folks ain't got the hole, and they ain't got the pole, and they ain't got the soul to do it right, real right, all night. In the ensuing years in California, the jokes came scarcer and the jobs grew meaner. Anger was always present whenever the subject of whites entered our conversations. We discussed the treatment of Rev. Martin Luther King, Jr.B., the murder of Emmett Till in Mississippi, the large humiliations and the petty snubs we all knew were meant to maim our spirits. I had heard white folks ridiculed, cursed, and envied, but I had never heard them dominate the entire intimate conversation of a black family. In the Colentz's home, if entertainment was mentioned, someone would point out that Harry Belafonte, a close family friend, was working with a South African singer, Miriam Makeba, and South Africa was really no different from South Philly if the West Indies or religion or fashion entered the conversation. In minutes, we were persistently examining the nature of racial oppression, racial progress, and racial integration. I fretted at the unrelenting diatribe, not because I disagreed, but because I didn't think whites interesting enough to consume all my thoughts, nor powerful enough to control all my movements. I found an apartment in the Colentz's neighborhood. I spent the days painting the 2 bedrooms and sprucing up the furniture I bought in secondhand stores, and returned each night to sleep at the Colentz's house. One evening, after the rest of the family had gone to bed, I sat up having a nightcap with John. I asked why he was so angry all the time. I told him that while I agreed with Alabama blacks who boycotted bus companies and protested against segregation, California blacks were thousands of miles, literally and figuratively, from those southern plagues. Girl, don't you believe it? Georgia is down south. California is up south. If you're black in this country, you're on a plantation. You have to deal with masters. There might be some argument over whether they are vicious masters, but be assured that they all think they are masters. And if they think that, then you better believe they think you are the slave. Maybe a smart slave, a pretty slave, a good slave, but a slave just the same. I reminded John that I had spent a year in New York, but he countered. You were a dancer. Dancers don't see anything except other dancers. They don't see. They exist to be seen. This time you should look at New York with a writer's eyes, ears, and nose. Then you'll really see New York. John was right. 7 years earlier, when I studied in New York, my attention was unequally distributed between the dance studio where I was studying on scholarship, my son, and my first disintegrating marriage. Truly, I had had neither the time nor mind to learn New York. John's eyes were blazing, and although I was his only audience, he was as intense as if he were speaking to a filled room. I tell you what to do. Go to Manhattan tomorrow. Go off to Times Square. You'll see the same people you used to see in Arkansas. Their accents might be different, their dress might be different, but if they are American whites, they're all Southern crackers. Then go to Harlem. Harlem is the largest plantation in this country. You'll see lawyers in 3-piece suits, real estate brokers in mink coats, pimps in white Cadillacs, but they're all sharecropping. Sharecropping on a mean plantation. I intended to see Harlem with John's advice in mind, but Guy arrived before I had the opportunity. I picked him up at the airport, and when he walked into the house, I saw that he was already too large for the living room. We had been separated a month, and he seemed to have grown 2 inches taller and years away from me. He looked at the hastily painted white walls and the Van Gogh prints I had chosen and matted. It's oak. It looks like every other house we've lived in. I wanted to slap him. Well, it's a little better than the street. Oh, Mother, come now. That wasn't necessary. The superiority in his voice was an indication of how he had been hurt by our separation. I grinned. Oak. Sorry. How about the desk? You always said you wanted a big office desk. Do you like it? Oh, sure, but you know I wanted a desk when I was a little kid. Now. The air between us was burdened with his aloof scorn. I understood him too well. When I was 3, my parents divorced in Long Beach, California, and sent me and my 4-year-old brother unescorted to our paternal grandmother. We wore wrist tags which informed anyone concerned that we were Marguerite and Bailey Johnson en route to Mrs. Annie Henderson in Stamps, Arkansas. Except for disastrous and mercifully brief encounters with each of them when I was 7, we didn't see our parents again until I was 13. Our reunion with Mother in California was a joyous festival studded with tears, hugs, and lipstick kisses. Under and after the high spirits was my aching knowledge that she had spent years not needing us. Now my angry son was wrestling with the same knowledge. We had been apart less than a month. He had stayed an unwelcome guest in his own home, while I had gloried in every day of our separation. He covered the hurt with a look of unconcern, but I knew his face better than my own. Each fold, every plane, the light or shadow in his eyes had been objects of my close scrutiny. He had been born to me when I was an unmarried, adventurous 17-year-old. We had grown up together. Since he was fatherless most of his 14 years, the ash of panic in his eyes was exchanged for scorn whenever I brought a new man into our lives. I knew the relief when he discovered the newcomer cared for me and respected him. I recognized the confusion that changed his features each time the man packed to leave. I understood the unformed question. She made him leave. What will she do if I displease her too? He remained standing, hands in his pockets, waiting for me to convince him of the stability of my love. Words were useless. Your school is 3 blocks away, and there's a large park almost as nice as the one on Fulton Street. At the mention of the San Francisco park where we picnicked and he learned to ride a bike, a tiny smile tried to cross his face, but he quickly took control and sent the smile away. And you like the Killens' children? Well, they live around the corner. He nodded and spoke like an old man. Lots of people are different when they're visiting than when they're at home. I'll see if they're the same in New York as they were in California. Youthful cynicism is sad to observe because it indicates not so much knowledge learned from bitter experiences as insufficient trust even to attempt the future.
And that will do it for this week's session. Katherine Massey Book Club. We'll pick up next week. We'll be in the middle portion of Chapter 2. Dr. Welsing used to say, when you play around with sex, joke is on the offspring. Absolutely. Absolutely. Number to dial, 605-313-5164. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. You know, I think it's kind of a shame. This should be like a really well-known book, and maybe it is. But like, dang, if this book is Dr. Maya Angelou kind of walking us through her recollections and experiences in which she did from 1957 through the mid to late 1960s, whew, that is a monumental chunk of time. Like, you go from Dr. King and the bus boycotts to, oh wow, they killed him. Her hanging out with Malcolm X in Africa to, oh wow, they killed him. I mean, wow. Just all of that, everything that, you know, she would have seen in that time. And then, like I said, Lumumba takes up a big part of this book. And if it's through that time period, I would think the assassination of Malcolm X is too. She wrote about that. She wrote about walking through the streets of San Francisco. And her brother pointing out how black people in the Fillmore, Jim Jones, were responding to the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965. So if that is all in this book, like, wow, that is stunning. It should, I mean, man, if you can read I Know Why They Kept It. Now, again, that would even call more attention. When I was in San Francisco, her statue out front, they had all these books. They're reading I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Why isn't this book up there? It's San Francisco. You've been hearing it. This is San Francisco and California history. Why isn't this book up there? We haven't even gotten to, you know, the good stuff. We're barely through chapter 2 yet. the email untiljustice@gmail.com. Let's see. We'll nab folks who we missed totally. *61 if you have commentary to share. *61. We'll nab folks that we missed totally, and then other folks who dialed in as well. Let's see. I'll nab the rest of the callers. We'll get I'll change my mind. We'll get the emails, and then I'll get the other folks who dialed in. Let's see. From chapter, I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything from the introduction. Okay, I got all that. Chapter 1. Abbey Lincoln, singer and actress, see movie Nothing But a Man, often referenced during the C.O.W.S broadcast. We talked about that with Dr. Martin Kevorkian, about that film specifically. She's featured specifically, Abbey Lincoln, in soundtrack to a coup d'etat. We ended Andrée Blouin's book with her performance on Belgian TV, and Abbey Lincoln is also going to be prominently featured in this book. Who knew? 2. My wispy sometimes lover, reverence for Eastern religions, a vegetarian diet, sexual abstinence. At first I thought this person was white, but that is not the case. Bravo, thank goodness. 3. Black folks can't change because white folks won't change. I disagree. We can make changes in our behavior, which is the premise of having a code. I agree. I don't know what she meant by black folks can't change because white folks won't change. Now, the white people won't change. I got it, but I don't know why white people not changing means that black, because if everybody stays the same, then everything will just continue as is, and that's not what we want. So if white people are not going to change, if things are going to change at all, non-white people are going to have to make major changes, like no more stay black and die. Major changes. Let's see. Badinage, Badinage, humorous conversation. Extraordinary vocabulary. Chapter 2. The Killingses, they excoriated white men, white women, white children, and white history, particularly as it applied to black people. I had never heard so much attention given to the subject of whites. The problem is white people. I say more attention should be that way, as opposed to, because it's so common, the normal, I think, is we sit around and gossip about Leroy and Lakeisha and Jamal. That's normally what it is. The other way, what are white people up to? When I'm not even saying you got to be sitting around and calling them names and all that, but just what are they up to? It could be some serious study. What are they up to in all areas of people activity? How is it that they manage to continue to dominate us? And what can we do about that? That is way different, since they done what the most familiar mystery. I think they are very interesting. I don't play them cheap at all on it. If we got to go all pile over to white people's house because they got the only working radio, let's not play them cheap. Man, white people aren't interested at all, but they got the only radio for 50 miles. They're plenty interesting. Stop playing them cheap. Let's see. California blacks for thousands of miles, literally and figuratively, from those southern plagues. Girl, don't you believe it? Georgia is down south. California is up south. If you're black in this country, you're on a plantation. If they think that, then you'd better believe they think you're the slave. Maybe a smart slave, maybe a pretty slave, a good slave, but a slave just the same. This reminded me of something that Neely Fuller Jr. would say. Amen. Even in fact, when she said that, I was like, man, didn't the Black Panther Party for self-defense, didn't that start in California and right there in the Bay Area, no less? They could have walked to Maya Angelou's crib, or at least taken the BART. Like, come on. And that's the same thing I said when we read Essie Mae, Dear Senator, and she got to California. Wow. This is thousands of miles away from Charleston, literally and figuratively. That's what she said. I was like, are you serious? Like in Rodney King land? Really? Watts? Really? Like, I don't know. For Simi Valley, I don't know if it's that far. Huey P. Newton, thank you, Black Brother. Stamps, Arkansas, population 1,693 according to the 2010 census. 38.5% white, 55% black. Let's see. When page 38, except for disastrous and mercifully brief encounters with each of them when I was 7, we didn't see our parents again until I was 13. This is a common theme in a number of book club selections separating attempted parents, victims from their children in the global system of white supremacy, racism. And so much of it is children having children, which we still do, and not really being serious about the business of producing children that are going to be classified as black. Playing around with sex, no plan for it, had them really young, all the rest of it, and then, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. Isn't that funny, Devontae? Ha ha. Let's see. And we'll get to the rest of it next week. Until justice@gmail.com. We'll pick up in chapter 2 next week. Let's see. Alrighty, folks who dialed in with a hand up. Let's see. Mr. Douglas, Lauren should be with us. I'll nab our other callers as we proceed.
May I be heard?
Lauren, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. This part, well, a lot of my comments were made in the email, so I won't re-go over that. But when she gets to the hotel, and she was scared, and she was, it seemed like she was afraid to tell her mom that she was scared, or she was hesitant. I'm not finding the section right now. But, oh, I see it. It said, she took my hands, put them together, and rubbed them. You're cold, hot as it is, your hands are freezing, are you all right? Nothing frightened my mother except thunder and lightning. I couldn't tell her that at 31 years old, the whites in the lobby had scared me silly. Now, when I read that, I thought, well, it's okay to tell your mom if you're afraid about something. But when they got up in the hotel room and her mom talked to her, she said, animals can sense fear. They feel it. And, well, you know that human beings are animals, too. Never, never let a person know you're frightened. And a group of them, absolutely never. Fear brings out the worst thing in everybody. Now, in that lobby, you were scared as a rabbit. I knew it, and all those white folks knew it. If I hadn't been there, they might have turned into a mob. That could have happened. Said, but something about me told them if they mess with either of us, they better start looking for some new asses because I blew away what their mamas gave them. Okay, and she had her pistol in her purse and whatnot. I really understand what she was saying, and I guess it's okay to be afraid, but maybe don't act afraid. And maybe she didn't have to tell her that was her mom. She already knew. I think that's all I have for that segment. I agree that black folks can't change because white folks won't change. I didn't think that was true either. People classified as black can change, and I think we should try to make changes that improve ourselves. And that's all I have. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Right on. That is the whole purpose. Whole purpose of reading, I hope, would be change your thinking, perspective, maybe even increase that vocabulary. I don't have to do all that filth flooring and sound like Sue Africa. Be a little bit more articulate, sound like Dr. Angelou's homie, Minister Malcolm. Any hoodles. Let's see. Mr. Douglas, get our other folks as well. Did you have commentary?
Yes, sir. So Yeah, it definitely was. I think we heard a lot about black people demonstrating black self-respect and communicating a less confused understanding of racism and white supremacy in this section that was read. Definitely displayed by a mother in the hotel, the confidence she displayed just walking, and dealing with the barkeeper there, and then also walking through the line of the white people there to the desk, demanding to be treated with respect. I mean, she even carried the great equalizer in her handbag if she needed to use it. Even with the business with the interaction with the bellhop, it was a business interaction. She was respectful. But it was not intimate. She clarified that we're not cousins. And I thought it was really gentle, and her being a mother, recognizing her daughter's fear and then teaching a lesson. That was really great there, that opportunity, because that's a life lesson. Although I do believe Maya Angelou had a good reason to be scared. I mean, you're dealing with white people, but, one has to confront and deal with that situation because we're going to have to deal with that. I thought it was really interesting, the killings and their discussion of white people and just the attitude they had towards whites was definitely a very accurate understanding. I like the fact that they told stories of whites, and the white people were the villains in these stories and blacks were the heroes. And I think that's, not something that you hear or would see on television or movies or things like that. And the fact that they were constantly talking about whites because, as you said, they are the problem, and they should be a focus for trying to understand. And it reminded me of, kind of like the opposite of the situation. Dr. Welsing, had mentioned about how she had talked to a white woman, and the white woman told her that white people, when they are alone, are always talking about black people. And so if they are always talking about black people, then I think it would behoove us to talk more about white people, since, they control everything and they are the problem. And I thought it was interesting talking about the plantation wherever you go. It's something that's echoed here on this program very often. And that's all I have to share.
Ought to hush your tongue, Mr. Douglas. We got the holiday classic Django Unchained, which was released on Christmas not that long ago, where white people are the villains. How about that? Now, see, Quentin Tarantino was trying to help us all along, see, give us a story, villainous white people and black heroes, even the beautiful Kerry Washington and Jamie Foxx ride off into the sunset, kind of. Much obliged, Mr. Douglas. Let's see. The retired firefighter in Florida. If you have commentary on the first portion of the reading, should be with us as well.
Yes, sir. Briefly, I think the book would. It sounds like it's going to be pretty good, specifically because of the subject person and her associations. The people that she associated with were very important people who attempted to solve the problem of racism and white supremacy. When she was describing the place where she was staying and her automobile, I was thinking about that probably is the category that white people call the quote-unquote middle class during that time. Anybody, speaking of her offspring, anybody that I think would be associated with Miss Angelou definitely would not be a shy person from her teaching and whatnot. Yes, when the term "I don't have to do nothing but stay black and die," I scrolled it on and I found something kind of interesting. It's a very short report. Do I have permission to read it?
Oh, if it's short, let's hear it.
Yes, it says up here as far as the title, Essence. I don't know if it's for sure that's Essence Magazine or not, by Raina Reed Rayford, February 9th, 2024. I can remember begging my mom as a child for a new toy, imploring that she simply had to get it for me. Her response, I don't have to do nothing but stay black and die. Years later, I would learn that she did not, in fact, come up with this pithy turn of phrase. It has been around for decades, with many scholars attributing its first appearance to a Langston Hughes poem entitled Necessity. I don't have to do nothing but eat, drink, stay black, and die, Hughes wrote. On Lean on Me, Joe Clark, famously played by Morgan Freeman, paraphrased Hughes telling the mayor, I don't have to do nothing but stay black and die. The phrase seems ubiquitous, according to The Root. Billie Holiday even uttered it during her first encounter with Maya Angelou, speaking about the book. What does it actually mean to stay black and die, especially in the context of being a black woman? As Forbes reports, the need to succeed is a natural human desire, yet for black women, our success is beyond simple bragging rights or a pat on the back. Our success represents something bigger than our own personal victory. This concept can serve as a motivator, but it also presents an added pressure. Often when presented with a major opportunity, we feel we can't afford to fail. According to the 2020 Women's Report, The Rise of the Black Woman, celebrating black women's excellence, critics implied that constantly striving for black excellence overemphasizes the strength of black women and preaches an unreachable level of womanhood, which would become expected, a level that denies black women permission to be human. One solution to embracing this expression comes from Trika Hersey, founder of the NAP ministry, who says that rest is a form of radical resistance. By that logic, it follows that resting in the form of discarding the mantle of constantly striving to achieve greatness and simply existing might also be a form of resistance. Being unapologetically
that's
black.
Enough. That's enough.
It was only about maybe a sentence left.
That's good. We're good. We got the gist of it.
Okay. All right.
Did you have any other commentary on the book, Retired Firefighter?
No, sir.
Much obliged. That's great. They even got the reference for the book in. And the interview that I played at the beginning, she does mention Langston Hughes, who does poetry. I said that I am no fan of the poetry. Man, oof. I'm not surprised that they would mention that phrase, I don't have to do nothing, stay black, die, that's attributed to Langston Hughes, a poem. It says ubiquitous, used, all over the place, but what does that mean? Exactly. And see, the poetry, that's real subjective. What exactly did Brother Langston, what was he trying to tell us in this poem exactly? Like I said, if anybody comes up with exactly what constitutes staying black, what is done or not done to stay black, let me know, and I will make sure I will never, ever, 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 ever do those things. You do not want to stay black, victim of white supremacy, like double whammy, victim of white supremacy. Anyhoodles, much obliged, retired firefighter in Florida. Stay black and die, indeed. Let's see. Get in a few of my notes and then we can wrap up for our first installment. This book, I guess, is not too long, so we won't be on it that long. hopefully, and we might, like I said, get an upgrade at some point. I consider it an upgrade because we'll have Dr. Angelou reading her own work, which is always better, I think. So, more excitement to come. Let's see where we picked up at. Let's see. She starts writing, super important. More reading, writing, less TV watching. Abby Lincoln will be a greater part in the book as we proceed. Looking forward to that. Let's see. Lost my place briefly. Okay. Max Roach was playing drums in the background on the track that I played last week with Abby Lincoln. She said when her mom called her and she's suggesting this, let's get together, maybe we can meet halfway in Fresno, she said she spoke as crisply as a white woman. Like, I just found that like curious phrasing, like as crisply as a white woman. Maybe I don't talk to enough white women, maybe. Let's see. The hotel had just so-called integrated. That's why I said, like, the Little Rock 1957, like, this era is, you know, the Little Rock, not Little Rock, the so-called North Carolina sit-ins hadn't even happened yet. That was, you know, starting in, like, 1960, 61. So, and that is another one where that could be an explosive situation, too. You go to the hotel and, you know, we just last week started allowing niggers, like, oh, man, you know, you get the wrong white person, man, that could be a lethal situation, too. So I could see why one might be afraid there. Let's see. Especially my entrance stopped all action. Every head turned to see me. Every white face. Yes, I can see. Oh, man. Woo. I'm going to need a stiff drink of something. Let's see. Where's the bar? Yes. Sobriety would be best. Let's see. They go through. They get up to the room. She says, nothing frightened. Mom, we already got that part. I loved the section where they get up to, what is it, 210, where they have the hotel room. And the bellhop, he comes with their luggage and such up to the room. He's, whoa, 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 we got niggers in the room. Did you all break in? What's going on? Oh, my goodness, we just started allowing niggers last. I'm, you know, surprised to see you all. And her mom is just, you know, whatever. She tips him and keeps it moving. And Maya says, you know, you were almost kind of rude to him. And she says, you know, hey, we're not cousins. We're just doing the, we're just giving our bags and that's it. We're not doing all the rest of it. Hey, that is myself. I am not all into brother and sister and all the rest of that. Replace white supremacy with justice. Period. We're not brothers and sisters. Let's see. She says when they start talking about Dr. Angelou is going to move to New York, she's going to stay with John Killens, great famous black writer. And her mom says, he's colored, isn't he? Since my first marriage to a Greek white had dissolved, mother had been hoping for a black son-in-law. I feel like we just had this conversation about whether or not someone classified as Greek is. Well, I think someone, this was the zebra murders. The black police officer, he was saying that one of the officers on the San Francisco Police Department, that he wasn't white, he was Greek. And I said, I'm pretty sure he doesn't look like Giannis Antetokounmpo. So, whatever. And I said, oh, and matter of fact, Bakari Henderson. That's what I said. Going to no bar with no white woman. That's what I said. Bakari Henderson. Now, you tell me, I'm not white, I'm Greek. What that mean to the Bakari Henderson's family? You can look up Bakari Henderson if you forgot that one. Let's see. So her mom, she talked about that in the intro clip that I played. That Negro went. Now that's interesting because she said that her mom, in the audio clip that I played from Say Brother, Dr. Angelou in that segment said that her mom said that they didn't allow women into the union, so she's going to join. In the book here, she wrote, Negro women couldn't get into the union. That's not the same as women. That's me, at least to me, like when I heard that intro, and I don't think my memory is that bad, but, you know, if I'm in error, misheard, my mistake, worthless Negro. But I think I heard it correctly, my memory is accurate. She said that her mom was inspired because they didn't allow women into the union. And then they allow Chinese and white women and, you know, all the rest. She wrote, they told me Negro women couldn't get into the union, and she said that she wanted to be a member of the Marine Cooks and Stewards Union. That makes me think that they probably had white women already in the union. They were probably a part of the Marine Cooks and Stewards Union. Now, I could be mistaken. Some of this might be a matter of record where we can just go and check and see. Did that? And they might even have pictures, because sometimes they take annual pictures. Who was in the union? When did they start allowing white women into the union? When did they start allowing black females, black people period, into the union in San Francisco? And let's see, and even maybe even what does that union look like today? Because now this might be the sort of thing where they're saying, uh-oh, the bots are going to take all these jobs. But either way, man, that is an important difference, and that's the sort of thing that happens on a regular basis where we're talking about white supremacy racism being practiced, and somehow it gets switched over to this is feminism or sexism or the white women are victims too or some other, you know, type of nonsense of that order, when, nah, man, I'm pretty sure that they had white women already in the union at that time, that Maya Angelou's mom was not kicking over no door for white chicks in the Bay Area. Let's see. Not cousins, as I said. When she talked about all the moving around that she did with her child, Guy, she said in his 9 years of schooling, we had lived in 5 areas of San Francisco, 3 townships in Los Angeles, New York City, Hawaii, and Cleveland, Ohio. I followed the jobs, and against the advice of a pompous school psychologist, I had taken Guy along. I mean, wow. Now, I guess, you know, some people, they love moving and move and, you know, just new school all the time. And, you know, you get to see all these different places and you've experienced so much in Hawaii and Cleveland and New York and all the rest of it. But I mean, wow, for sure, especially at a young age. And even she said internally within San Francisco, they moved around a lot. I mean, even that could mean, you know, okay, so we still stayed in the 415, but now I'm at a different school, you know, that type of thing. Man, that can be really challenging for a lot of people, not just children. You know, all your little friends and such that you make, like every year, you got to start all over again, and new set of friends and new teachers and all that all the time. Just wow, that is really and you got father hunger. Oh, that is really, really challenging. And she says sometimes they, you know, would live, when money was plentiful, we lived in swank hotels and called room service. At other times we stayed in boarding houses. That too, like what in the world? Like just stability, homeostasis. Like if anything, that too reminded me. Fuller says, hey, let's be about frugalness. How about when the money is good, we save. get some stability. That way, when the salad days, as they say, come, it won't be that bad. We've been saving all along, and maybe we can get a place where we don't have to do all this moving, where we, bang, we're just here. This is where we do it. Maybe, just saying, and again, some of this would be planning, because I don't think she planned, I'm going to have this child at this age, and this is what my, career is going to look like, being a single mom and all that. I don't think any of that was planned. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe Guy wrote a book later on and talked about all this, but wow, I think for a lot of children, that would be really, really difficult. I don't think I would want to sign up for that. Like, we're going to do all this moving around and new schools and, oof, man. Let's see. I love that John Killen's mom, Mom Willie, they called her, all the stories that she gives, that's great. Now, one, hey, we are getting to talk about racism. Now, she might even be telling real stories about lynchings and all the rest of it, sundown towns and all of that. I love it. That's the exact sort of you could have opportunities to ask questions. Go get a map. This is the sort of thing you could write this down and even go and research and see now. Hey, was she just making up stuff, or is this real? Like, oh my goodness, we can go check some of the newspapers and dates and times and see if this sort of thing happened. All of that, but getting an opportunity. Why did we have to flee? What does it mean to be white? Weren't there some good white people? All of that. There should be more of those dialogues and just telling the truth about what has our experience been. Now, that dialogue is stood out where they said that they talked about, she said when she was a young black girl in Arkansas, she said that whites, they owned the cotton gin, the lumber, everything that mattered, and they had to find some way to talk about that white people didn't own everything. She said they would sing, white folks ain't got the hole, they ain't got the pole, they ain't got the soul to do it right, real right, all night. Dr. Welsing talked about that specifically in the State of the Race conference that I played yesterday. She said that, hey, we don't have anything else to do, so we just get real excited about sexual activity and brag, white people don't know how to do that correctly and complain and have difficulty getting an orgasm and all this and now and all the gay and lesbian and sex with the dog and all the rest of it. Well, if you want to brag on that now, if anything, what that can lead to is a lot of reckless sexual activity and having children, which she talked about, and she talked about forever, having children before you are prepared to have them, when you've made absolutely no plan for what to do with them, and race soldiers win again. That sort of thinking right there, that totally benefits racist man, racist woman, racist child. And again, now, you can say all that, Strom Thurmond. Let's be serious, gang. Let's be serious. Let's see. When she said that about, like I said, California blacks, you can take it either or. Rodney King. Matter of fact, I mentioned Rodney King in the Black Panther Party. I said King Richard. That's California too, man. In Indian Wells in California, where they went, white people got mad, Serena Venus match and all that. Let's see. Last one. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that's Fuller again. She said she was talking about Guy. He covered the hurt with a look of unconcern, but I knew his face better than my own. Each fold, every plane, the light or shadow in his eye had been objects of my close scrutiny. He had been born to me when I was unmarried, adventurous 17-year-old. We had grown up together since he was fatherless, father hunger. Most of his 14 years, the flash of panic in his eyes was exchanged for scorn whenever I brought a new man into our lives. I knew the relief when he discovered the newcomer cared for me and respected him. That right there. Fuller talked about that. Dr. Welsing as well. Like, once you have that child, all of that is done. The male, the female, all of that is done. You have that child and it doesn't work out, which is likely to happen on the plantation, even for a lot of people classified as white. You have that child and it doesn't work out. That is done. There is no, well, I'm going to go and try again. There's more fish in the sea. Number one responsibility is that child. Number one responsibility is that child. Not, we have done it the other way forever. Again, not valuing producing black children at all. And, well, I got to leave this baby, and, you know, can you watch this child? It's just 2 weeks, and watching, I'm running over here and going over here and all this old nonsense. And bringing all, this is Leroy, and I met him at the club, and this is Jamal, and he's nice, and all this old foolishness. Bringing up, she was a victim of sexual abuse. Nah. All of that is done. Yeah, you got your needs and yum. And like I said, that's males and females too. All of that is done. If it's that important and you got to get your date on and I'm still young and all that, hey, don't have the children. Just a suggestion. I think Dr. Welsing, she did co-sign on that one. Said it before I was born, so I guess I'm co-signing on what she said. We'll pick up the rest for next week. Much obliged for all the folks who chimed in. Retired firefighter Lauren, Mr. Douglas. Hopefully we'll have lots more constructive. And like I said, we might get Minister Malcolm in here as well. I was reading for Lumumba, but I mean, wow. If anything, like, man, this should be a really popular book. Lots of people, I hope, did read this way back when, and we're just Johnny and Jane come latelys, maybe. Any hoodles, we'll be here tomorrow, neutralizing workplace racism, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hopefully not too many people having to work too tough on the plantation since it's so-called holidays. Sit at home and, you know, stuff the stockings or Kwanzaa or whatever. Sobriety would be for Lady Day. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. I know they will have sobriety checkpoints from today, probably through the end of the year, calendar year. Especially if you have younger drivers. You have young motorists that just got their driver's license or, 20 years old, that sort of thing. You do not want to be out and about late after 10 p.m., driving around, got your friends and things, looking to go Christmas party, Christmas reunion. Maybe you've been away at school, haven't seen your friends in a while. Great. Get to one spot and stay there. You do not want to come in contact with race soldiers, badge or no, late at night. Really bad idea. Oscar Grant, he was killed at midnight on January 1, 2009 in the Bay Area, San Francisco. Well, not quite San Francisco. That's Fruitvale is East Bay. Same thing. Sobriety would be best. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. No name-calling black people. No cursing in the 10 stops. No throwaway offspring when you play around with sex. Woo! The joke is on the offspring. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
No problem. You're a victim.
Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.